Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 133. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by the lovely Chris Reagan. Chris, how are you today?
I'm well.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I feel
you
productive.
I've been getting a lot of... You cleaned your room? Did you clean your room? You cleaned your room?
Not really.
Oh.
You know, this is the magic of video making, where like this, what you're seeing is very clean, but just outside is real bad.
Yeah.
Like it's real bad. There's a bunch of nonsense, bunch of clothes, but it looks presentable.
Yeah.
Which is all that matters.
Whatever makes you happy is fine. I just asked because of the green screen that was up last week.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I have it in the living room because I was shooting something for my channel yesterday.
You have the classic mirrors for your closet door, which is something that's in California. Like I encountered that everywhere I lived in California.
Mm-hmm.
But if you move over and then we can see the screen and then the video, then we can technically go back in time, I think. If we keep delving deeper and deeper into the image, you know? It's pretty crazy. How time and space and physics work.
I really don't like the mirrors. Like I hate mirror doors in general. Like for closets, I always, because like back where I was living in New York, we had just wood. It was like just wooden kind of like sliding doors.
Sure, me too.
So I'm not a fan of this. Gotta be
no,
real.
me neither. I don't know what it was. A very like literally, I lived in like 4 or 5 places in California, 4 I think, and they all had those doors, and it does make the rooms brighter.
Yeah,
but I'm not a big fan of mirrors. Now, you might be Colin. You're so adorable. Why wouldn't you want to look at yourself? And it's a reasonable question, but my whole thing with it is just that I'm afraid of the. So I had I don't want to say I have bad experience, but
bad
Bloody
experience
Mary,
with mirrors.
Well, Bloody Mary. Remember, you know Bloody Mary when you look in the mirror and you say,
right.
I had like just that always stuck with me since I was a kid, and I was always like, oh, something horrible is gonna pop into the frame and fucking kill me.
Did you ever play Fear?
Yeah, I did. I
those like whenever she would like appear in mirrors, like in that game, like she would sometimes like show up in reflections and shit. It's like, oh my god,
yeah.
So what an effective use of that trope in a video game. Perfect.
Indeed, I love Fear. I would love to see Fear come back. I believe WB is the owner of that IP.
Monolith so made at least I think 2. I think
maybe 2 Fears. There's a third Fear for sure.
Yeah.
Because I remember going to an event for it. It was weird. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. Long time ago. All right, Chris, this is Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. It's good to be here with you. And of course, good to be here with our many tens of thousands of listeners on podcast services, on YouTube, on Patreon. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We're almost back up to 10,000 subscribers, so keep it coming over on Patreon. We very much appreciate your love, kindness, and support. And of course, if you listen on free feeds, that's perfectly acceptable. Just leave us nice reviews and nice little scores. You get a little star score, thumb up, whatever it is you do on your various outlet of choice. Sacred Symbols Plus is our Patreon exclusive episode of Sacred Symbols we do each and every week. And last week's was a fun one, although Chris wasn't able to make it for this one. We'll talk about that in a sec.
Mm-hmm.
It was Sony centric TV and movie hypotheticals, because Sony plays PlayStation Productions, rather, I can't speak, has been talking about their new projects and all of that. So we kind of said, what would we like to see? And I'm actually curious. One of the ones I put in there, Chris, was a Cool Borders show for like tweens and teens. That's kind of like Saved by the Bell, but they're on like the mountain, or they're in like a mountain town or something, you know? And what do you think of that idea? Now, I was pretty enthusiastic about that one.
I don't think it's a bad one. That's a pretty good one. I think there's a lot of opportunities for good shows. I wrote a bunch of them. Like I had a bunch of pretty good suggestions, I thought, but I couldn't record.
Yeah, so your internet was going out at 3:00, right?
3:00 every day, reliably and predictably. My internet would just crash. That day that it happened once while we were recording, like the first time that it happened, that one day that we were recording, and we had to be like, oh, what the fuck's going on? And it was like a reliable pattern every day afterwards. And I was like, what the hell is this? And then the guy came like yesterday, and he was in the in the room with the router for like a minute, and then was like, "We're all good," and I was like, "Did you do it?" Like it did. I feel like he didn't do anything.
Right.
So I'm really cautious. Like I'm not convinced anything has changed, but we'll see. We'll see at like 3 p.m. today whether or not I get wiped off the face of the earth for a couple seconds.
The stroke of 3.
It's so weird. Like I've never had that experience before. We're just like reliably every day on the dot. What the fuck?
Yeah, that is strange. You would assume that what he basically did was just went in and called. You know how you ever hear the technicians how they have like the special numbers they can call and they can talk to people, and that annoys the shit out of me because I'm like, why can't you just talk to me? You know, and we can figure this out. But maybe he just did that, and he's like, hey, this is Aaron Jones, number 5721, and I'm here in Burbank, and I need you to reset the internet at XYZ Anytown, USA. Thank you very much. And that's what he said, and then he left. Yeah,
I mean, I don't even feel like he had enough time to do that. Yeah. So like, I mean, whatever, we'll see.
Yeah, we will.
If not, dude, I like any opportunity to complain, you know.
Sure, I do too.
Yeah, it's fun. So it's an East Coast thing.
Yeah, it's called catharsis, and yeah, it's great. By the way, speaking of New York, I'm just gonna keep checking in on this situation. Are you moving back? I mean, what are you doing? You're not gonna stay in California, are you?
I mean, it's just really hot right now with the virus, and there's kind of like I don't know, the vaccine shit is just kind of up in the air. Like I have no idea when or where this thing is gonna happen, but ideally, like I wouldn't want to like fly next week and then like a couple days later they're like, oh, vaccines, and then I already have it, and then I've killed my family, you know?
Right.
So
that would be a shame.
It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out, like I'm trying to wait for the numbers to go down again. I'm also waiting just to see if like maybe this thing is available to everybody sooner than later, and also just I have a lot of work to do in the next couple weeks, and I want to make sure I have everything done before I start going on another one of these adventures. But
sure, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I've decided that I'm just gonna live as a hermit forever and never get the vaccine. So
yeah,
who needs although it? I gotta say, I did buy. I thought I was really being cute and clever, and so I bought some Pfizer stock like a little while ago, and that was I don't know why. I thought it was gonna be like, oh, Pfizer is gonna, because they have like the first one. Everyone's gonna love Pfizer. Then Moderna and all these other motherfuckers came out and screwed everything up. So it is a little weird how we've been so worried about the vaccine, and then no one knows in the United States how to actually get it.
Yeah, I have no idea. I've not heard about it. I'm not privy to any of the channels that I'm supposed to go through. I don't know.
It's amazing. I think it's funny, actually. I mean, it's not funny. Obviously, people are dying, but I think it's funny that it's like the hurry up and wait kind of mentality of like, we got to get the vaccine. And then they're like, Pfizer and Moderna are like, hey, here's the vaccine. Yeah. And everyone's like, well, we don't actually want it.
Yeah.
We just want it.
Yeah. And then they're going bad because people don't know how to distribute them.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, because they have to stay really cold, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Well, we like to complain.
We do.
So we'll have plenty to complain about on this show. By the way, I should have said this at the top. This is important because we brought up Sacred Symbols Plus before. Oh, I think I was going to bring it up, and then I got totally distracted by some other bright object here. Game of the Year was supposed to be this week. Mm-hmm. We were going to do Game of the Year this week, but there's so much news that I feel like it would do a disservice to one or the other. So what we're going to do for Sacred Symbols Plus next week is that we're going to do Sacred Symbols Plus all about Game of the Year. And that's going to go through the normal, $5 Patreon subscribers and then $1. But we're going to make it free. So I'll let you know next week when it's live, and then you guys can go check that out. So basically, even if you're not a subscriber, if you're a scallywag, a lobsterback, all of those kinds of things, then you don't have to necessarily join us on Patreon, but maybe you'll like it and then kind of come over and...
maybe.
So please do join us.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, also Defining Duke, doing very well. Our Xbox podcast hosted by Mr. Matty Plays in AGC, and that's on video as well, and you should subscribe to that. It's actually interesting because it's totally the inverse of our show, where our show does really well on podcast services and then it does okay on YouTube. Defining Duke is doing really well on YouTube and not very well on audio services. So it's already developing its own cadence, which is great. Yeah. And we've gotten some people writing in being like, can you do this like they do it? And can you do that? And I'm like, no, I want them to do their show and we'll do our show.
Yeah, that's the point, is that they're different. Yeah. Like otherwise exactly. It would feel like it was like a reskin. And like I've listened to a couple episodes just because like I mean Xbox, I'm interested in all these things, and it's cool that it really doesn't feel like it's sacred symbols but Xbox. It really does feel like its own thing, which is ideally how we would want to keep these things.
I agree. I agree. And you'll be on the show shortly. We're going to try to set that up in the coming weeks because you're eagerly wanted on that side. And what else here? Oh, Hebroxia 2, my game, comes out February 3rd, so keep an eye out for that. And let's see, Resident Evil 8. Right before we recorded today, they announced that there's going to be an event showing off the game on January 21st. So you might actually, if you're listening to this, might even hear this like around then or later. But we'll have that news next week. You can watch that. And Chris, I wanted to alert people before we get into some of the chicanery that we'll begin with. Games Radar actually has a preview/interview of Gotham Knights up, and there hasn't been very much about this upcoming WB Montreal game. So if you want to go check that out, Google around and you can find that because I know people are curious.
Hell yeah.
Seems like it's very co-op centric.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, which I don't know how I feel about that really. Yeah,
me neither. We'll see. All right. Let's see here. Oh, so we're on video now. Everyone knows that. Adam Barnes wrote into us on Patreon, just like you guys can out there, and gals, of course. He says, "What's up, boys? Colin, you got to get your beard tamed. My guy, just get the sides trimmed, maybe even a cheeky fade. Chris would agree if he knew what a beard was. Stay hard and stay slippery." Now, we're on video. This is the first time I've been on video since 2017 this year.
Yeah.
So a lot of surprise, both positive and negative. I will be happy to report, Chris, that YouTube doesn't change. Still people calling me nice things like the Unabomber, etc. So, always love to be called that. Or some other, I look like I'm in the Taliban or,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know,
A beard will do that. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. The fact that, like, you haven't been on camera in, like, years. Technically.
Yeah, people just forgot what I looked like. Yeah. Because there's so many comments if you look at the YouTube, and I think it's really actually quite nice. But it's like, wow, Colin's like a lot. Like, I can't believe Colin. I'm looking at Colin talk. It's something that people, for some reason, people wanted. So. Yeah,
not so much of a novelty for me.
No.
I stream and make stuff constantly, but
right, exactly. But I feel like it's gonna make our show better. It's just good to see you, look at you again. Look at you. You're so stunning.
Stunning.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that a nice thing to say?
That is. It's what it reminds me of. You're real breathtaking.
Breathtaking, yeah, like Seinfeld, of course. Well, it's only been 10 minutes, so it should come up at some point. We have a couple of inquiries here before we get into what we're playing that are food related, and I'm curious about this. Jordan Avery wrote into us and says, "Hey guys, I'm writing to you today as a concerned father. Several months ago, I joined in the laughter against the guy that ate his pizza upside down. I thought this horrible habit was never going to cross my path, but during dinner, I saw my youngest eating his pizza upside down. I'm deeply concerned. Is this contagious? Is there any hope for my kid and pizza? Any guidance or condolences during this time are greatly appreciated. Thanks for the podcast." So I'm going to give the advice that I always give in these kinds of situations, or typically give, Chris, which is you must give your child up for adoption, right? We have two different options. When you talk about your spouse in such a way, divorce, right? Kid giving you a problem, adoption. Mm-hmm. Those are the two solutions. I'm curious if you agree.
Yeah, I would agree. Like that is definitely something that warrants the nuclear option.
Yeah,
I think, it's like at a certain point, because that's not something that's been taught, like that's not like you don't do that. Presumably your partner doesn't do that. Presumably, like I've never seen anybody on TV do this. So this is not learned behavior. This is intrinsic to the person, and that just cannot be helped.
I totally agree.
You just can't.
It's a nature versus nurture question in some sort of fascinating way, but as if the nurture came from elsewhere.
Yeah,
like some sort of other. Who is your child hanging out with? What kind of? I might even call them terrorists. What kind of terrorists is your child hanging out with? Because here's the thing: the pizza comes on a plate. Like, what other food do you take and then turn upside down and then eat it? Now, I know that there are things that please don't write in about it. But typically speaking, you don't like take the cheeseburger and then flip it.
No, I can't think of a single thing.
No,
I can't like if you want to get real cheeky, maybe an Oreo. But like nothing really substantively all that different that isn't like completely symmetrical. Maybe like a cracker or something. Like maybe I want a saltine and I want the salty side this time. Oh, maybe I want the bland side. I don't know why you would want the bland side, but I don't buy that this is a healthy thing to be doing.
Yeah, an Oreo is kind of like an anagram, where it's the same no matter like upside down or right side up. Where
right,
that's not the definition of an anagram. I think an anagram is like a word like
you're thinking of a palindrome.
Palindrome. Oh, is that what it is? What is an anagram?
An anagram is oh my god, what is it? What the hell is an anagram? I knew at one point.
Anagram definition. An anagram is a word or phrase or named by rearranging the letters of another. Okay, so I understand that. So that's like a word jumble.
Yeah, that's like
so then palindrome.
Yeah, definition. A palindrome is a word that reads the same forward as it does backward.
Right, a word or phrase or sequence that reads the same as forward.
Yeah,
okay.
Like like I man am regal, a German am I.
Oh Jesus!
Which is very specific, and I don't know why I remember that.
I was thinking more of like a word like rotor, Yeah. ROTOR.
Yeah, or like race car, I think was one of them.
Oh.
I think. Yeah.
Wow, that's it. It is. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't
weird?
That interesting. Fascinating.
Look, this is an educational show.
I know. I don't even know what the show is about half the time. I just sit down and talk in front of a microphone for a few hours. All right. Damon Weathers wrote in. This one's a little weird. I'm curious what Chris thinks about this. Hey, dudes, I'm constantly getting shit dirty looks from people at work and home because I put my bag of chips in the fridge and eat them later when they're cold. Not all chips, just plain potato Lays and sometimes spicy nacho Doritos. Am I really that repulsive for eating cold chips, or can I continue living my damn life? I need the voices of reason or insanity. Whichever role you want to play, thanks for the kick-ass work as usual, the only thing that keeps me awake at work. Thank you, Damon, for writing it. I find this a little peculiar, but I'm going to let you live your life. I do weird shit too, but why do you want cold potato chips? That doesn't sound appetizing to me.
Yeah, personally. This is odd, but not offensively weird. It's like, because I personally like think like the times that I've had chips, it's always been typically like room temperature fucking chips, or they're at like a restaurant as like an appetizer and they're hot, which is like awesome. Like getting hot chips, like when they're like fresh off the whatever the hell they used to make chips. And it's like, oh man, this is
tortilla chip conveyor belt.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, yeah. This is awesome. But like, I never thought about ever putting chips in like I don't think I've had cold potato chips, so I can't even speak to whether or not that would be good. But I know that people would give me weird looks, which is like baffling now because now everybody agrees that this is just a unanimously good decision. But when I was a kid, I would put like my Reese's cups in the freezer, because it's like, oh, I love the taste of Reese's, but I hate opening it in like the summer, and then it's like it gets chocolate all over your hands, and it's like, this sucks. But you put them in the freezer, and now you've got this like amazing chocolate that you can eat, and then your hands are just completely clean.
Look at that.
And then everybody, like when I was a kid, would be like, "You were fucking weird. Why would you do that?" And I'm like, what?
And now they're all copying you, probably.
Yeah, and now it's like trending. It's like, you ever do this? And it's like, you people.
I hate those things where it's I just feel very old generally on the internet. Remember this? And I'm like, I think I was in college when that happened. I remember when that happened. Thank you. I do remember that. Wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here, Chris. Let's talk about what we're playing. It says here you're playing Immortals Phoenix Rising, Ubisoft's open world game. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm playing this game, Ubisoft. It's a very Ubisoft open world kind of affair. Although I do think it's a little bit cleaner in the way that it approaches it. It doesn't feel as overwhelming or tedious as a lot of Ubisoft stuff does. I will say, you mentioned to me last time we talked about it that like the intro like really put you off. I got to admit it did put me off as well.
Yeah, it didn't make me want to play it at all.
Yeah, it was very it reminded me of Borderlands, but like like in the worst ways. Like it was just like very clearly like trying very, very hard, and it's like, all right, this is kind of and it's long. It's a very long intro sequence for something that is new and hasn't really earned necessarily that amount of attention from you. But I feel like once the game starts and like once you're actually like walking around and like engaging with and like climbing and like engaging with the puzzles and kind of exploring and fighting, and I feel like it becomes pretty damn good. Like it's actually, I'm enjoying my time with it. I'm still pretty early on. I don't even really know if I've done much meaningful progression. I've acquired like a couple things. I've got the Breath of the Wild ripoff magnet thing where you could like lift shit.
Oh, cool.
So that's where
it looks very Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, it's very clearly like Breath of the Wild inspired, but a lot of it is it's different enough and kind of cool enough to engage with that I'm like, all right, yeah, I kind of like this. Like I'm really enjoying the combat system, honestly, even though it feels like very simplistic. Just the way that parries work and just the way that animations kind of lead into each other. It's like, this isn't a bad time, but the voice acting is going to take a little bit of getting used to, I think. I'm just not used to a game like this, but maybe that's just a problem with me and like just conditioning, you know? Because I feel like I used to play games like this all the time that would just like be kind of like tongue in cheek and kind of not so serious. But after, you know, Last of Us 2 and like Ghost of Tsushima and all these like super
Doom.
like, yeah, Doom, like all these, well, Doom's a bit campy, so, but
Yeah, that's true. That's a bad example, actually. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
But it's still like dark and like relatively serious. So
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe it's just something that I got to acclimate to. But I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, all the videos, because the most I saw of it was like a really, I think I said this last week, but a really stunning video someone put together of like frame by frame comparisons of Immortals and Zelda.
Yeah.
And how it's like literally copying the game. And I think that's fine because Zelda's gameplay wasn't really what bothered me. It was just kind of aimless and also boring. So so I want to get back to the game, but I must admit that I did delete it off my console for now. I did buy it. It was half off. I think it bombed, so I think that will be the last we see of the series, but we will find out. But Paul McFerrin wrote into us on Patreon about this. He wanted to pick your brain, and he said, hey, guys, while making my way through Immortals Phoenix Rising, I've come to a surprising realization. It has the best DualSense function aside from Astro. From the tension of the bow to the indescribable pinging of finding a collectible, I think this aspect of, he says IFR, I decline that acronym, isn't being talked about nearly enough. I know Chris has been immersed in the game for a bit. Any comment on this? Stay well and keep up the unparalleled work, men. So have you noticed the DualSense haptics?
So I have not, and this might be a little awkward, but I got it on the Series X specifically because there's just nothing, there's no exclusives on it. You know, like, and I've got like Demon Souls, I've got Spider-Man, it's like, and I got this other system here, and I'm like, I gotta use this fucking thing. So like, and like it's a multi-platform game, so typically like, I don't know, I'll typically go over that side. But I've heard that from people. Did you notice it at all, or did you even get to the part where you started playing?
No, I didn't even play the game. The time to fire was too long. I was like, I'm not sitting through this.
It is a long time to fire. Yeah. Like I was in a Discord call with my girlfriend, and I was like, this has taken a hilariously long time to start. Like, I don't know if that's too much. I don't know if that's the joke, but like, you gotta stop.
It's not funny. It wasn't a funny joke. It made me delete the game off the console. So, well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. No, that makes sense. You play everywhere, wherever you want.
I still gotta get through Demon. I wanna finish Demon Souls too. Like I'm feeling like taunted by the fact that it's just on my hard drive, and it also just looks so damn good, and I'm terrible at it. I just gotta be like, no, I can't let this beat me. Especially because I heard it's one of the more unforgiving ones. So I feel like if I beat it, then I don't have to play Dark Souls. You know, I could be like, nah, I don't need. You guys don't understand.
Just skip right ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand what you're saying. All right, well, we'll check back in with you next week, see if you're still playing Immortals.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still playing Danganronpa. I've beaten it years ago, so I'm not going to say too much about it right now, but I'm on the last chapter of that. I'm just playing it in bed at night. It's a nice way to kind of end the evening. But one game that I did jump into, so I'm just looking for something to play that's fun. And I'm like, you know what? This Maneater game has been on the periphery for a while, and it was free on PS Plus, or it is free on PS Plus. So I downloaded it and I started playing it. And I must say, it's fucking awesome. I mean, I don't know why I didn't realize how good this game was, but I keep talking about it on Twitter because I'm like, I want you guys to pay attention. This is a really unique and novel and interesting game. And Nicholas Miller actually wrote in about this very game. He says, hey, CNC, first time writing into you guys, but I finally have a reason. Maneater. I couldn't believe how much this game kicks ass. I downloaded it this past weekend, and I couldn't have been more shocked with how fun it is to play the role of a human devouring shark. The pure joy takes me back to my childhood days on PS2 playing War of the Monsters, creating destruction and mayhem and laughing the entire way. Also, shout out to the story. While simple, the opening few scenes provided enough fuel for me to want to justify wanting this tale all the way through. Thank you for all the wonderful content and loving the new video podcast. Thank you, Nicholas, for your support.
Hell yeah,
I
Nicholas.
totally agree. So have you messed around with this game at all, man?
No, I've had my eye on it, like, but I heard it like ran kind of weird on the last gen. Like, does it run at 60?
Yeah, it does on PS5. I haven't played it on then PS4.
I'll jump in. It's the free game, right? Is it PS?
Yep, it's a free game. Yep.
Yeah, I got to get on it then. Cuz like this is one that caught my eye, but like I heard that it had like performance issues when it originally launched, so I kind of like waited to hear about it on the next gen, but I guess I just sort of forgot to catch back up with it. But it looks hilarious. I'm glad that Nicholas brought up War of the Monsters, cuz that's exactly the kind of shit that it reminded me of, where it's like, oh, I love this. It's like a Destroy All Humans type kind of novel, kind of. It feels like a 2004, 2005 like middle market concept.
Definitely.
You know, and I love that. Anything that's like, oh yeah, you get to play as the alien. Well, no, you know what? You get to play as the shark, and you get to eat people, and that's the game. And it's like, yeah, it's awesome.
It's really interesting because I love first of all, it's by Tripwire Interactive, Georgia studio. And it takes place in the southeast, like in the bayou, kind of like this coastal town. And it's really just cute because, I mean, I guess it's really bloody, like over the top bloody, but it's cute because like you play as a baby shark and then you just grow into a larger and larger shark, and you get like this reputation basically with all the different fishermen. And the more you harass everyone, like there are basically like 10 enemies in the game, and like they'll come after you one after the other. And so like the first one's still going after me because I've caused him enough destruction that now he wants to capture me. So it's kind of like a pseudo, almost like The Deadliest Catch is almost how they're filming it in some way, you know, and it's really funny. It really is cool. And so the craziest thing, and I want to just verify this, because I looked it up earlier, but I want to make sure that I have the, yeah, exactly. So you know who Chris Parnell is from SNL back in the day? So he does the voiceover in the game, and I haven't heard him in like a really long time. So when I was playing it, I'm like, is that fucking Chris Parnell? And usually I'm wrong about that stuff. I'll be like, is that guy? And it's like totally wrong. Like that guy's been like dead for 10 years or something. But yeah, Chris Parnell is doing the VO. So like, it's just constantly, it's funny. It's a funny game. It's cute. I really recommend this game to people. It's novel. It totally is. Like if you're in open world games like I am, and I know Chris is, and you're just tired of that Ubisoft kind of formula. This has a Ubisoft formula of checkboxes, but it's just different. And one of the cool things is you can eat like all the fish and turtles around you. And so it's funny. It'll say like catfish, and it'll have like he's like level 3 catfish. It'll say like it's very funny. And then you eat them and you like gain a little bit of experience points for doing it. So you heal yourself and then you also gain some experience. So I don't know. I love it. The one thing that I'm confused about, and people can write in about this, is that I don't feel like I'm playing it right. Like, I don't feel like I know how to play it. It's one of those games where I feel like I'm just flopping my shark body around trying to hurt people and like, you know, bite into them. But you can't like lock on or anything like that. So I feel like when I'm attacking human enemies, I don't really know exactly what I'm doing. So I need to learn more about it. But excellent game. And it's free.
Yeah. No, I am excited to jump into it. I was just, I'm glad to hear it runs well.
Yeah, 60 frames and I think native 4K as well.
So. I mean, that's pretty good. I love the concept in general. Like, I love anything that sounds like it's from that era where there were just like all these insane concepts for 3D kind of adventure games and just sandbox nonsense. Like, did you ever play Hulk Ultimate Destruction?
No, I didn't.
It's basically prototype at the Hulk, and it's awesome. Like, you could like take a car and just like smash it and like wear it as gloves, and it's just this just ridiculous shit that I miss in like as video game concepts, because I feel like we're at a point, or we've been at a point in the industry where we've just had very, very serious kind of it's either narratives or just, oh, here's the next esport FPS, you know. So it's nice to see like a game that's literally just, hey, you're a shark and you eat.
Yeah, no pretenses. It's super cool. And Tripwire is an interesting studio for people that don't know them. They're, again, like I said, that they're down in Georgia. I think they're the biggest studio in Georgia. And they're the guys that did Killing Floor, which is really best known on PC, although the sequel came to PS4. And they also did those games, Red Orchestra. They're just known for PC games. So it's cool to see them also in our space. And welcome. I imagine we're going to see a sequel to this one. All right. Speaking of what you were just saying, though, Chris, about kind of the AA space, I wanted to read this real quick from Bisero. He wrote in and said, hey, fellas, do you think AA gaming is making a comeback? With games such as Vampire, Maneater, Immortal Shell, and the upcoming Werewolf the Apocalypse and Hood, I'm starting to see a trend. Are you even remotely excited to see more AA titles, or is AAA and quadruple A, which is now this term, all in an indie all we want. Personally, I really like smaller budget but not quite indie games, as their quality is usually good, and they seem to be willing to take some risks. Those games are usually under the industry standard MSRP as well, so I feel more inclined to pick them up. So this is what you were saying, Chris. I mean, I like this space too. War of the Monsters is not a great example because that's a first-party game, but there are many others that used to exist in this space, and it's always the space we used to say where I was occupied by the likes of THQ and stuff. And I have noticed we had been identifying specifically Focus Home Interactive as the kind of the target for what we're envisioning as this resurgence of not only AA games, because you have Deep Silver and you have a few others, but quality games. Focus Home Interactive did that Plague Tale game. They did Greedfall. So it seems like they might be the guys to watch, although they didn't do this game. So
yeah. No, they do seem to be like modern the modern THQ equivalent. Because I remember back in the mid 2000s, that was like pretty much anything with THQ was probably going to be at the very least going to be pretty neat, even if it wasn't like perfect or like 10 out of 10. And that seems to be the case lately. I love it. I love the resurgence of the AA middle market. Those are always like my favorite like surprise gems,
Definitely.
It's just nice to see it. It's nice to see a return to that shit. Love
it's also interesting how series kind of come into the space, right? AA.
Yeah.
Maybe peak into AAA and then kind of come back down. I think, speaking of THQ, I think Red Faction was one of those. Yeah. I think Homefront was one of those that was kind of, and then just never really reached at all. So it's interesting to see kind of people come and go in that space as well. But yeah, Chris and I are both great lovers of that space. So we'll keep an eye on it. And we're just great lovers generally. By the way, Maneater has a 68 on Metacritic. That is nonsense. Just letting you all know. Just complete nonsense. That's definitely not a 68. All right. Unless you, I don't know, maybe Kotaku reviewed Maneater and they wanted like some sort of like John Stuart Mill fucking allegory in it. I don't know what you were looking,
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know what you're looking for, but
I think people are just like, if it's not grimdark and serious, it's not a real game. I honestly feel like that's an attitude that's kind of pervasive now, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, it is annoying. I agree. And I know you've really been trying to fight against that, and your tastes fight against that.
Yeah.
So I'm much more the problem in that space than you are, actually. So I must admit. All right, Chris, as we promised, there's a lot of news to get into this week. A lot of big news. And I actually struggled in like what order I should even put this in, because we are a PlayStation podcast. So I'm like, do I put the Killzone news first or do I? But I've done it in this order. So typically we try to represent what's most important, but we're doing the best we can here with this one. Is that right? What do you want? That's enough of that. God damn it. Number one, in news that's not only unexpected, but thought legally impossible, a publisher other than EA is making a AAA Star Wars game. The publisher in question is Ubisoft, and it has officially dispatched its internal team, Massive Entertainment, the Swedish studio behind 2016's The Division and 2019's The Division 2, to make an open-world Star Wars game running on Ubisoft's Snowdrop engine. Now, this is weird because publisher Electronic Arts has a 10-year deal with Disney to be the exclusive developer and distributor of AAA Star Wars games, but that deal was signed in 2013 and will be elapsing in less than 2 years. Thus, Massive's project has been essentially dated. We won't see it until 2023 at the earliest. This makes sense, as it's worth remembering that Massive is also working on a AAA open-world Avatar game that will presumably come out alongside Avatar 2 in 2022. All right, so this is step one. For the first time since the exclusivity deal was signed in 2013 with EA and Disney, a year after Disney bought Star Wars from Lucas, we're going to get a AAA Star Wars game. I am excited about who's making it, and I'm interested in what you think about them breaking out of that sarcophagus of mediocrity over at Electronic Arts.
That is an amazing term.
Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you.
No, this is awesome. This is all around pretty great news. I gotta be real, like, this is fantastic, and I love that Star Wars is finally out of that area and finally, because I feel like we really had a lot of great Lucasfilm Star Wars games before that exclusivity deal. like a lot, like a pretty good amount. And then they got that exclusivity deal, and we just got like 3 games, only 2 of which were good, and 1 of which started off really bad. So like this is nothing but good news. It means we're going to get more Star Wars games. It means we're probably going to get more interesting Star Wars games as opposed to just like these, focus group kind of authorized. I honestly, although in fairness, Rogue Squadrons I heard was pretty good.
That's true. That's the 4th one out of there. So I did say that there were 3, but there are 4.
Yeah, that is fair. I forgot about it because it's so VR centric, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But the thing that confuses me more about this specific item of news is Avatar 2 is happening still.
Yeah, apparently I was looking this up in preparation for the show. Avatar 2 and Avatar 3 are apparently both filmed.
Oh, God.
And I guess it's just going to take a lot of post-production to get them out.
I don't. I wish I had the third eye that was necessary to see what is so special about Avatar, but I just don't see it, and I think that's a massive waste of their time. But the Star Wars news is awesome. I love this.
It's really interesting news because it just didn't seem like either side really gave a shit.
Yeah,
that it wasn't going right. That was the thing that was so confusing.
You know what it felt like? It felt like EA was like, well, we got the license and no one else can do it, so whatever. No one can compete with us. And Disney was like, we own the world, so whatever. Just do what you want. And that's what it kind of came across like. It's like neither party really cared all that much.
Yeah,
and
it seems like that.
And amusingly enough, I think it's telling that the Star Wars games that EA was making got better and better over time as this almost like it's like, oh man, we're not doing well. We gotta actually like start doing good shit. Good shit. It almost felt like they felt like they had to at the end. Like, because we just got Fallen Order, like, recently, and now the deal is up. It's, like, too little too late, I guess, But...
Yeah, it almost... Doesn't it kind of put into focus, potentially, the Fallen Order announcement that year at E3? Like, this might have been when the rubber was hitting the road for them, where they started to kind of get an inkling that they were going to lose their window, because they did squander it. And Lucas squandered it, too, because Star Wars is huge, but... And Mandalorian's obviously doing very well, and they're doing all this. But Star Wars, the zeitgeist of Star Wars, when they announced the new films, and then in 2015 they released the new one, and all of that, they totally just fucked it up. Like they didn't have anything ready to go, and it was weird. I just thought it was peculiar. So I think EA is, well, and we'll talk about them in a second, but I'm sure they're disappointed. But I think Lucas is thrilled to get out of this deal because it was a stupid idea to begin with. And I don't know why Disney learned with Marvel and others to just pit all these studios and these publishers against each other. Like that way you get Spider-Man and you get all these great games. You don't need to just give it to one. And I think people kind of came in and said like, why did we do this? This doesn't make any sense. What we want is people from all over the world to come pitch us, on what they would do.
Also, it just puts you in an unnecessarily hole, in an unnecessary hole when you're the owner of the IP. Like imagine like Square Enix comes to Marvel and they're like, oh man, I want an exclusivity deal for Marvel games. Like and then you give that to them and then you get Avengers and you don't get Spider-Man.
Right.
Like that sucks. Like you might as well, it's better to have Avengers and Spider-Man and have one of them fail than it is to just have one of them, I would argue, because the chances are just better off for you. Just very weird that they went this route in the first place. I remember when I first heard about the exclusivity deal, I was like, why would you do that? Like, I knew immediately back then, I was like, we're just going to get less Star Wars games, like fewer, because that's just how that works.
It also, I would note that we lost probably the 2 most potentially exciting projects in that.
Yeah, 1313.
1313 was canceled because of the deal. And I know people that worked on that game, and they're pretty insistent that it was not only very far along, but really good. So we're never going to see that game again. That game, they scrapped that game to start again, and I think that was at the behest of EA. And then somewhere along the line, we also lost Ragtag, which was the Amy Hennig project, which was clearly going to be the most exciting thing to come out of that deal. So it's too bad that it worked out that way, but they've wrested it away. And what's good news is that it's not like they said like, well, now we're with Ubisoft. It's it's hopefully everyone's going to get involved, and we'll learn a little bit more as we talk more about who's getting involved and in what ways with Lucas, because there's a lot of news here, which is part of what makes this so complicated.
Get me a Jedi Power Battles 2.
Oh, give me a Masters of Terrascasi 2, and I'll be thrilled.
The fighting game?
Yeah, it was awful. That game was horrible. This is a really horrible game. That and I've said before, Yoda Stories, biggest waste of Star Wars money ever. I fucking hated that game too. Now here's an interesting one. I think this is speculative. I mean, it's definitely speculative. Might be wishful thinking. But it got me thinking when he wrote in, Richard Duffalo wrote into us. Said, hey guys. So a while ago, Corey Barlog tweeted out a thread about a Star Wars game he wants to see made. And I went to the thread. It's talking about The Mandalorian. He went into very specific detail about it. With news of the EA exclusivity deal ending, could the space game he supposedly be working on be a Star Wars game? So when I first read this, a few people wrote in about this. And when I first read this, Chris, I was like, no. And I still feel like the answer is no. But I think it gave me pause where I'm like, why wouldn't they? I mean, why wouldn't Disney, after seeing what Insomniac did with Spider-Man, then say like, well, what else can you guys do for us? Yeah. And why wouldn't they want to maybe make an exclusive Star Wars game? So I don't think that's what Corey Barlog's doing. I kind of hope it isn't, because I would like to see them do a new IP, but that would be fucking nuts if what Sony Santa Monica was actually doing was a Star Wars exclusive. And that's what he was directing. That'd be crazy. That would be crazy.
I don't. But the thing is, if you're working on a game, typically you're not tweeting in depth about like what your game design philosophy would be. Just generally speaking, that's just not how people operate. If he was working on a Star Wars game, he wouldn't be tweeting that. Like that tweet wouldn't exist, I think. Like just fundamentally from just a base psychological perspective, it's like why would you potentially give away the secret sauce of like what you're working on for free, just out in public? Just doesn't make any sense. Because a lot of people do that. A lot of people will be like, "Oh man, I want to see a speed racer game in this style with this, whatever the hell." And it's like, yeah, that's cool, and you're allowed to say that because you're not making it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my mind was like, well, it could be a red herring. No. He's also could just be very passionate, as many of us are, about Star Wars.
Yeah.
I just, I was like, well, maybe. I mean, I think the bigger question is not so much that, but would Sony get a Star Wars game? If Ubisoft's getting one, and others, why wouldn't, and Microsoft's getting one, which we're going to talk about in a little while, although it's another Lucas property, why wouldn't, well, we think Microsoft's getting it. We don't know quite yet, but why wouldn't Sony get their own? So this brings up some interesting questions, and I think it makes sense for us to spool up in our minds the possibilities of a first or second party Star Wars exclusive, because I think it's possible.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think it would make sense, honestly. Like, why not? Why would you not try and go for that?
Especially because of what they did with Spider-Man. I mean, that's the big thing to me. It's not like they should be going and being like, look what they did with this property. These other guys, why wouldn't we want to give them a bunch of stuff? So we'll see. We'll see what happens for sure. All right. The other thing that we didn't really talk about is who's making the game. We brought up that it was coming from Massive Entertainment. Massive, known for The Division. Now, some people are disappointed by this because they think this Star Wars game is going to be a game as a service or kind of a persistent game. I have to tell you guys this. Well, let me read Adam Stump and his question first. He says, "Guten Tag, amigos. With Ubisoft making an open world Star Wars game, do you feel it'll just be a reskin of Assassin's Creed or Far Cry? Would you prefer a first or third person perspective? These are important questions. Also, I really like the addition of a video version of the podcast. Keep up the great work. Cheers." Thank you very much, Adam Stump. Now, it's going to be a third-person shooter. And I'm not saying because I know, I'm just saying because of look who's making it. And I get quite giddy about that. Imagine a Division game on Coruscant or in like some capital. Like it just takes place in one city, right? Or one place. And you're doing X, Y, and Z. I think that sounds dope. I don't know if that's exactly what they're going to do. But I'm a big Division fan, so I like Massive. I think they're great. So I'm where a lot of people see pessimism, Chris, I see optimism. What do you think?
Yeah. No, the Division 2 is a really great game that nobody talks about. I think because it's a live service game, and also because it's just not the biggest one. Like obviously, Destiny is like the juggernaut in that space, and it's the game that kind of feeds every other game that came after it. Like even just like simple things. Like I noticed even in freaking Immortals, like Immortals Phoenix Rising has the cursor. like the on-screen like console cursor, and it's like, what do you?
Yeah, I know. We noticed that when we were playing here too. I'm like, why?
It's just very weird. Like, it made sense in Destiny for the type of game it was, and it was also new at the time. But now it's like it's very common, and it's like interesting. But yeah, I think, I don't know. This is exciting. Like, even if it is like a live service type of game, Massive seems to have demonstrated that they know how to make a live service game that is also just fun to play, regardless of the live service elements. Because I really enjoy The Division, even though I don't play with anybody, and I don't care about loot in that game at all. I don't care about armor in that game at all. It just feels good moving from point A to point B and like fighting enemies and just like going through these like play spaces that are like really, really intricately designed and really well realized. I think they can handle the Star Wars IP really, really well. If it's not a live service game, then that's even better. But you know, we'll see how it goes. But this is exciting. I guess it could be disappointing for people who like might have wanted a Division 3, I guess, because that's presumably just not going to happen if this goes through. But
well, because of the Avatar game too. I mean, I think they would be able to run both games, but I don't think that's the case now.
I don't think they're big enough to run 3 big projects like that. Like, no, 2 is already kind of like stretching it, I think, for most studios working on anything. So, yeah, Division 3 is likely not happening, but I don't know how in demand a third Division game is, especially because, you know, even just going off of what Destiny did, like they just took Destiny 2 and was like, yeah, Destiny 2 is Destiny 3. You know, fuck it. Fuck a third one. Who needs it? And, you know, I think it would make sense to just keep supporting the Division loosely in that way while they move on to this really cool premise for a Star Wars game. I love this. Massive making a Star Wars game. Hell yeah.
Well, I think there's a good sign, multiple good signs, let's say, in this, which is number one, I think it's a nice sign that they went to, or I guess thinking about how they knew, everyone knows the Avatar game's in development. This is a Fox property, but there's got to be some chatter behind the scenes that the game's coming along nicely. So maybe they're willing to give them the project. I think the second thing is the hint. And this is why you need people to listen to people that know things about video games, everyone. The hint is in the engine. They talked specifically about using Snowdrop. That's the hint. Assassin's Creed runs on Anvil and stuff like that. You're not going to get a game like this really vertical game. It's a different, those are both Ubisoft engines, but I think that by saying what they said, I think it was a signal about the kind of game that they're giving us, because Snowdrop really only runs The Division and a couple of other games. Like I think the second South Park RPG runs on it and stuff like that, but it's not what they use for the architecture of Far Cry or Assassin's Creed. Yeah. So the devil's in the details, my friend. And we'll see soon enough. I'm excited about this project, and I am disappointed that so many people are not excited about it. But like you said, people don't like The Division for some reason, and I think it's awesome. So
I think they just haven't played it. They're probably judging it based on how it looks. I think, because I don't think you can play The Division 2 and come away from it being like that had no merit. That wasn't good. You might not necessarily like certain subjective elements of it, but that's a damn good game. It's a damn good third person tactical shooter. Like, especially the best one I've played in a long time.
Yeah, I don't have the experience you do, so I think that you're what you're saying almost, I think, carries more weight in some way, because I don't have as much to compare it to. It was just one of those things that even the original one just really grabbed me, you know?
Yeah.
So I like third person shooters. So I like first person shooters too. All right. Now, the next piece of this is number 2. This, of course, begs the question, Chris, where does this leave Electronic Arts and Disney when it comes to Star Wars? Well, it appears EA will keep on making games. It just won't have exclusivity once its current deal expires. EA has been largely panned for failing to take proper advantage of its window to make something truly great. Only 4 Star Wars games have been launched since the deal was inked. 2015's Battlefront and 2017's Battlefront 2, both from EA's DICE team. 2019's Jedi Fallen Order from Titanfall developer Respawn. And then we forgot about the 4th game, which is Squadrons, and that's from Motive up in Canada, another EA developer. But a statement from EA makes clear that they will keep making Star Wars games and apparently have the blessing to do so. They said in part, quote, "We are proud of our long-standing collaboration with Lucasfilm Games." That's a new name, by the way. We're going to talk about that in a minute, which will continue for years to come, end quote. Disney, for its part, told website Wired, quote, "EA has been and will continue to be a very strategic and important partner for us now and going forward. But we did feel like there's room for others," end quote. Ubisoft's game is being made in conjunction with Lucasfilm Games, which is a new branding for Disney's Star Wars games division. We'll talk about that in a little while, like I said. we kind of went over most of this already, Chris, but I feel like this could work for Disney too, because I think EA's strength remains in games as a service and persistent games with sports and all of that kind of stuff. FIFA, Madden. And then they have some strength, like you said, in Battlefront. They turned Battlefront around, and I think people really ended up liking it. It was a huge seller for them. And Jedi Fallen Order was really good, and it's going to get a sequel, I think. And Squadrons is good, and I think that might get a sequel too. So I think maybe they have a few different ways forward, and maybe this takes a little bit of pressure off of them too, because internally they must have heard the tick, 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 tick of the clock and being like, well, where is the great Star Wars game that we promised? And so maybe they'll be able to do it without so much pressure on them.
Maybe. I also think it puts just the right amount of pressure on them, though, too, because it's like now that they don't have exclusive license to this IP, that means that if they're going to throw their hat into this ring, it's going to need to be something of quality to compete with everything else that other people are offering. So it's kind of like, it's less pressure, but I wouldn't even say it's less pressure. I think it's pressure in the right areas, because you don't want to feel pressure that you're going to lose something. You want to feel pressured to be like, oh, there's competition now. And competition means you're going to get good shit. This is the best thing about this deal to me, is that we're just going to have all these studios competing to make the best Star Wars game, because they're going to want to prove themselves in that. That's a huge IP. It's a huge honor to have like a Star Wars game that's like beloved. And you know, I think we're probably going to get a ton of like genuinely great Star Wars games out of this.
I hope so. It seems like that's what they're kind of flooding the zone with TV. So I feel like, why wouldn't they have a similar plan for movies? And it seems like this week, with all the reveals of various things, one of which we will talk about, and I think is maybe the most interesting in a moment. But I feel like you're right. I feel like this competition's good, and EA has kind of languished in some ways without competition. Madden is often criticized for having no competition, and therefore is just what it is. And so, yeah, they have to raise the level of their game. And hey, if they do a Battlefront 3, for instance, which is first person, of course, and if they compete with a snowdrop driven, massive made third person shooter in Star Wars that is also very made, then people can get whatever they want, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of exciting in that way. Plus, we'll have a single player game, maybe in Jedi Fallen Order 2. And I kind of feel like KOTOR 3 has got to be in the mix. I'm sure that they've shopped that around. I actually know some of the people that work at Disney in the games division, and I know these guys, and I know what they like, and I know that they have to be pressing the issue on some of these games. So yeah, that's what's most exciting, is who's going to get that one, because that's inevitable. Mm-hmm. And you have to assume that BioWare might be the inside straight for that one, unfortunately. But we'll see.
Maybe we'll see. Maybe they can knock it out of the park. Maybe, who knows? Who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
At this point,
it's been a long time since we've gotten a good BioWare game, so I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here, Chris. Number 3. Now I want to note that we're reading this because we don't know the nature of this game yet. So it might not be on PlayStation, but I think it's
big news though, regardless.
Right. Exactly. We would have talked about this in listener mail at the very least. Number 3, a new AAA Indiana Jones game is in development. Word comes by way of Bethesda, the publisher of the game, and the owner of the studio, Machine Games, that will be making it. The announcement came in the form of a brief 30-second video panning over a desk with various Indiana Jones-related accoutrements like maps and books, but most notably his fedora and whip. Interestingly, Todd Howard, the creative director of Bethesda Softworks, Bethesda's flagship studio, is acting as executive producer. In typical Bethesda fashion, the publisher admitted that, quote, it'll be some time before we have more to reveal, end quote, but for some reason opted to announce this now. Developer Machine Games is the Swedish Bethesda-owned team behind the Wolfenstein Revival, which began in 2014 with the New Order. Bethesda, for its part, is a Maryland-based publisher owned by ZeniMax Media, which in turn has recently been purchased by Microsoft for $7.5 billion, along with its various studios and IP. Todd Howard is best known as the executive producer turned game director of the Elder Scrolls franchise going back to the late 90s, as well as the Fallout revival, beginning with 2008's Fallout 3. So there's a lot to get into here. It's worth noting that the deal isn't finalized yet, the ZeniMax deal, but it is on the path of being finalized. So my first question to you is this going to be an Xbox exclusive, or is this going to be for everyone?
So I think it's going to be an exclusive. I think Indiana Jones is one of those franchises that is both popular enough to get like a lot of people excited, but also kind of niche enough to not necessarily feel this sense of obligation to put it everywhere. The way I feel about it is kind of like if PlayStation's fine with taking Spider-Man as like an exclusive, like I don't see any reason why Microsoft would feel all that compelled to make Indiana Jones, multi-platform, especially if they paid so much for Bethesda and they're like, as nice as the Series X is, it's going to need reasons to get it. And I do think this is one of those kind of like middle of the road kind of things where it's like Halo's a big flagship and that's going to sell, and that could be, on PC and who knows, even fucking, I could see it on PlayStation at some point too, but they're going to need something to drive people to that machine. And I think Indiana Jones could be that thing. And I think it also could be their answer to Uncharted on Sony's side, because now they've got potentially a very that's also the thing though. It's like Uncharted's kind of an Indiana Jones game, so it's like what's really happening with this, and is it going to be an FPS because it's machine games? How does that work? I'm super interested in this, like just out of curiosity. I'm not even necessarily that big of a fan of Indiana Jones, or at least not cognizantly. It's been a long time since I've watched them. But it's curious, and it's cool that this is happening. I do think though that this, like, why are you announcing it now?
Right. There's so much to get into with this. So that's one thing. The second thing is the exclusivity thing. The third thing is like, what kind of games are going to be? You bring up a good point. Machine Games is a first-person shooter studio, so it's not unheard of. I mean, so is Guerrilla. So
yeah, and Respawn also.
Right. So anything can happen in that regard. I highly doubt this is going to be a first-person game, but
yeah,
it could be. I don't know. I mean, they might have a vision. I love machine games, so whatever. Although they did drop the ball a little bit on Youngblood, but
I still maintain that was kind of Arcane.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
like
true.
It feels not have even done that. It feels like they panned that over to Arcane. And it's like, what? We don't want to make this. And they're like, what? Just make it. They're like, all right.
I still got to play the Cyberpilot one too, which I think Arcane did as well, which was the PSVR one. But yeah, so there are a lot of questions embedded in this. Let's start with Jefferson Wentworth's question here on Patreon. He says, ahoy hoy. So a new Indiana Jones game has been announced. All I can think is why? How do you think it could and should differentiate itself from Uncharted and Tomb Raider? So you're right. Tomb Raider is inspired by Indiana Jones. Uncharted is inspired by Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider was then inspired by Indiana Jones, the revival. So I don't know. Like, you have to assume it's got to be a third-person action-adventure game in the spirit of Uncharted. But I have this feeling that what it's going to be is something more like Tomb Raider in third-person action, but with areas that you go to, or maybe you go to different maps and you explore a little bit more, so it's not quite as linear. But it's going to be years before we see this game, so I have no idea. What do you think it will be?
My gut is telling me, third person kind of set piece oriented. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be closer to Uncharted. I do think. I think it's going to be a little bit more linear, a little bit more plot driven or character driven. I do wonder though, like Indiana Jones is so synonymous with Harrison Ford. And Harrison Ford is so
curmudgeonly.
Yeah, like is he involved in this at all? Probably not. But
I can't imagine.
But that's the thing. It's like, is that going to be weird? That it's going to be Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford, but also kind of because it's a video game and you could make him whatever. You could essentially make it Harrison Ford without it being Harrison Ford. Are they going to use the iconic music? I assume so.
Yeah, I would imagine
because it's like probably going to be like the biggest thing that's probably going to separate it from a game like Uncharted or Tomb Raider is that iconography and what they can do with it. I'm excited about it. I'm interested in it. I'm very curious to see like how Machine Games handles a game like this, because there's, like you said, there's no way this is going to be a first-person shooter. Like this, like Indiana Jones running around with like two shotguns.
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense just from a perspective standpoint.
Yeah. They must have seen something in Machine Games, and in fairness to a lot of developers, first-person shooter devs tend to make those jumps a lot easier than a lot of other devs. I don't know why that is. Maybe they have a better sense of scale or a better sense of like what it's like to actually be like in the perspective of somebody, so it's easier to pull the camera out than it is to pull the camera in. I don't know what that is, but like you said, Guerrilla moved from Killzone to Horizon relatively easily. Respawn moved from, Titanfall 2 to Jedi Fallen Order, and I don't see any reason why Machine Games couldn't pull off a similar thing, especially because Machine Games is just really good. I just don't know what the hell this could possibly be. Like, it's so hard to envision anything Indiana Jones related at all in 2021, let alone a video game. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
We will. It's worth noting that Indiana Jones 5 is coming in 2022, and I think Harrison Ford is involved in that, but I don't know if it's clear if it's... So for people that are not fans of Indiana Jones, I love Indiana Jones. There was a series in the early 90s that people might be familiar with called The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Sean Patrick Flannery, I think, was the guy that played Indiana Jones in that. And I was wondering if that would be what they would do, is go back to young Indy, because we kind of pick up with Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark when he's already a professor and he's kind of like got a career. We saw him in his teens in that show, which was very much beloved. So maybe now we can see him in his college years or something like that. And I think that that's kind of how you sneak someone else in. That's not, you can't get the old guy, obviously, from the old show. And then Harrison Ford doesn't want to do anything. So I think that's how you do it. And that would make sense with the hat and whip, which wasn't really quite, there's a Young Indy episode where you learn about all that, like where he gets all that stuff. But that kind of seemed to indicate that he's already on his way. So I love Indiana Jones. I think he's it's not a huge surprise. I went to college for American history. I love old stuff and archaeology and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he was my dude, when I was a kid. I loved him. Plus he was killing dudes and he was killing Nazis and he was fucking just destroying people. And
I just loved that score, man. That theme is just so fucking, it's John Williams, right?
Yeah, John Williams.
So good.
It's also worth noting that we haven't gotten an Indiana Jones game in a while. The last Indiana Jones game we got was Staff of Kings. And people might remember that was a 2009 game, but that was one of those weird games that was a PS2 and Wii game and a PSP game. So even though it came out in 2009, it was not even a next-gen game. So we've gone several generations, actually, without seeing Indiana Jones. Presumably this will be a next-gen game or a this-gen game now. So they will have skipped PS3 and PS4. And we will find ourselves at PS5. But the big question here is, and this is the thing that we had mentioned earlier and I wanted to kind of get into, is why now, and is it going to be exclusive? These are the two major questions, and I think you can answer them in a way that will suggest whatever answer you want to kind of beg. Yeah. It is weird that they announced it the same week that all the Star Wars stuff was announced. In fact, I think it was the day before or the day after or something. I don't know why it was quite lined up like that. It could be a thing to just kind of rouse your investors. Everyone's year ends in March for their fiscal books. So that could have something to do with it. But I was also wondering if you were reading into this, that this might not be an Xbox exclusive. This game might have needed to be announced before the deal is firm. And it might have already been in play. And so it might be something they need to get out there to at least suggest that it's not going to be part of the exclusivity deal. But I said on Twitter that I think this will be exclusive. I agree with you. And people were like, well, why are you saying that? And you said that games weren't going to be exclusive. And I said, I didn't say that, I don't think. What I said was that their biggest games are not going to be exclusive. And those games were already announced a long time ago. So I still think Starfield and Elder Scrolls V will be PS5 games. Yeah. This seems like a game that you would hold back based on the timing of everything. Yeah.
I also just think in general, I don't think Microsoft is in a position where they kind of like they're kind of addicted to the goodwill. Like I think they've got a really good reputation as of late, and it's one thing to announce a new IP and have that exclusive, and it's another thing to take like the Elder Scrolls and rip that away. Like those are two very different PR situations. Like I think it's more justifiable to announce something new and then have that exclusive to your console than it is to like acquire a studio that is known for building, a specific series and then just rip that entire series away from an entire player base of people. I think, I think that's kind of part of it as well. I just don't think people would react well to it. And that's why I think Indiana Jones is specifically. It's also because PlayStation has its Indiana Jones technically, multi-platform has its Indiana Jones technically. Microsoft doesn't have their Indiana Jones. That's true. And it might as well be Indiana Jones.
That's a great point.
It's probably the best way to compete in that front, to be completely fair. This could be awesome.
I actually love the idea. They wouldn't do it, but it would be funny to have a trailer where it's like what, you know, where they pay homage or whatever to Uncharted or something like that, or the others, and be like, well, what better way than to make our Indiana Jones game, like you said, than with Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
It is a very compelling thing, and they're very magnanimous with that kind of stuff, where they would bring up their competitors. So I don't expect that, but it just seems like a funny idea.
That would be pretty good.
All right. That leaves all of that news now, the Star Wars and Lucas related news. Number 4, Sony gave a briefing of sorts at this year's CES, and they didn't have a whole lot of interesting stuff to say pertaining to our show, except for one important topic: release windows. After showing a sizzle reel of upcoming PlayStation 5 games, Sony kindly dated many of them, some more loosely than others, and we thought we'd relay word. For starters, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is simply marked as coming 2021, as is Horizon Forbidden West. However, other games have specific release months attached to them in 2021, most coming to PS4 and PS5. Ember Labs' action game Kenna Bridge of Spirits, which looks awesome, will launch in March. Heart Machine's upcoming RPG Solar Ash will be coming in June. Those are the guys that did Hyper Light Drifter a long time ago. And then, let's see here, adventure RPG Little Devil Inside from NeoStream Interactive will come in July. And then following that, horror game Ghostwire Tokyo from Tango Gameworks, which might be owned by Microsoft soon, will launch in October, only on PS5, as will adventure game Stray, again on both PS4 and PS5. Stray is about a cat. 2 other perhaps bigger games were also dated, this time with years. Capcom horror game Pragmata, which looks like Dead Space, has been dated 2022, while Square Enix's mysterious RPG Projekt Athia will be coming in 2023.
Hey, so how right am I?
You're pretty well. You're often very
Listen,
right.
man, it's really telling. I don't know if you picked up on this too. I assume you did, but no God of War mention at all.
Yeah,
for 2021, not at all. Even though they dated many of these games, they were like, they said Horizon coming 2021, Ratchet coming 2021. They could have easily just said God of War coming 2021. It's not there. I don't know what to tell you guys.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people would argue against you and say, well, they didn't show any footage, and so they wouldn't put it at the end of the sizzle reel. But they could have just showed even a logo, which is exactly what they did, and they do that all the time. So, yeah, it doesn't really make any sense. I think the bigger concern I have here is that they've not differentiated when Rift Apart is coming out. We kind of already assumed Forbidden West is going to be a fall game. I was kind of hoping Rift Apart would be dated by now. I don't know if they're waiting for Returnal to come out and then date it, but that kind of bummed me out a little bit. But nothing else here really surprised me. Which of these we're both obviously excited about Ratchet and Horizon, but which of these third-party games are you most interested in?
Oh man, I think I think I'm interested in all of them except Projekt Athia doesn't look all that interesting to me. Like everything else looks cool. Like I'm really excited to see what Ghostwire Tokyo is, because I remember just seeing that trailer initially and being like, what? Whoa, it's a horror game. And then seeing the gameplay and it's like, oh, it's an action game? What's like, it just looks interesting as some Kenna also, I remember looked really charming and really cute and really cool. Little Devil Inside was also something that I thought was pretty cool. I don't know anything about Pragmata though, really.
Yeah, Pragmata was the that Capcom space horror game. Remember they showed it at the
was that the astronaut and like the Bioshocky looking?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So everyone was kind of excited about that, and they've kind of told everyone to chill, I think, a little bit.
We'll see about those. I think Ghostwire is the one that like sticks out to me the most.
Yeah, Ghostwire looks great, and I'm actually most interested in. Kenna looks really good, but I think Ghostwire is probably the game for me as well. I think Solar Ash is going to raise some annoying controversy online because it's written by Zoe Quinn. Oh, the somewhat controversial games writer and creator. So that's going to create a whole fucking annoying shitstorm. Yeah, that I don't want to deal with. The game looks pretty good though.
Oh well, that's all that matters.
Indeed. Yeah, I love games. People straight up when I go and congratulate them and they just straight up blocked me on Twitter. I'm like, well, I still like your game.
Yeah.
I always though click around. I'm like, oh, I hope this person didn't block me, and then they didn't. So that's nice.
Solar Ash. Yeah, it looks like a real looks like a game this time. So
yeah, I didn't like Hyper Light Drifter. I only played it a little bit, but it was too vague. I don't like games that are just vague.
My roommate loves it.
I hate that shit. Where it's nice once in a while, but I'm like, I don't want to play a vague RPG. I mean, it's like the last thing I want to do. A vague walking simulator or something might be fine, but in fact, that's what I would prefer. All right. Number 5. Now, this on a normal week might be the biggest piece of news, but it's not. In a 5-minute mea culpa posted to various social media feeds, Polish developer CD Projekt Red apologized for the performance of Cyberpunk 2077 on last-gen consoles like PlayStation 4 and promised to fix it with a fairly comprehensive plan. Marcin Nowinski, the co-founder of the studio, was the messenger, and you can watch the video for yourself as he seemingly humbly apologizes on behalf of himself and CD Projekt's board for poor decision-making around what was apparently a difficult technological bind, one they nonetheless subjected themselves to. In a distilled Q&A on the Cyberpunk website, it's noted in part that, quote, Cyberpunk 2077 is huge in scope. It features a multitude of custom objects, interacting systems, and mechanics. In the game, everything is not stretched out over flat terrain where we can make things less taxing hardware-wise, but condensed into one big city and in a relatively loading-free environment. We made it even more difficult for ourselves by first wanting to make the game look epic on PCs and then adjusting it to consoles, especially old gens. That was our core assumption, and things did not look super difficult at first. While we knew the hardware gap, ultimately, time had proven that we've underestimated the task, end quote. He claims QA didn't run into many of the bugs encountered, and that they assumed the Day Zero patch would largely fix any known issues. That obviously hasn't been the case. The roadmap for Cyberpunk 2077's post-release plans have thus been heavily interrupted. 3 hotfix patches have already been launched, but 2 more primary patches, 1.1 and 1.2, are still en route, as well as more updates for the rest of the year, free DLC, and then, in the second half of the year, the next-gen console upgrade that will bring Cyberpunk 2077 to PlayStation 5 natively. There's a little bit to get to in here as well, but I'm curious what you made of the video itself. What did you think of it when you watched it?
I thought, okay, it's cool that they're finally like saying something. Took a while, I think. This should have been a little bit faster. It's nice to hear like, oh, we ultimately decided to put the game out. It's nice to hear that level of accountability, but at the same time, I just like my bullshit detector was going off constantly during this entire video. Oh, we didn't run into these obvious bugs. These aren't bugs that you run into. These are bugs that just happen. Like these aren't this. You can't not run into them. You know, it's like saying like, oh, I didn't run into my room. Like when I woke up, it's like you're in the room. You're in your room. Like you can't. Some of these bugs are so pervasive and so like ubiquitous, even on like PC versions, which are like the best ways to play. Like even on the best running version of Cyberpunk 2077, there are bugs that are really obvious, and I don't buy for a second that their QA didn't pick it up. It sounds a little bit more like they're kind of throwing QA under the bus, which is like really, really shitty. Because they definitely acknowledged they definitely knew that there were bugs in that game. Like it's you cannot convince me that they just we didn't know. Come on, dude.
I agree with you. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, like I hate confrontation. I don't like it. I don't like assuming the worst out of people. Dude,
I love the game. I love the game. It's a great game. I enjoyed it a lot. It's probably one of my favorite games that have come out this in the last 10 years. But it's also obviously broken, and you knew that. You had to. Like you couldn't not.
That's the thing, is that I just don't know how you can circle the square with this. Mm-hmm. How do you make a game like this and not know the intricacies of it? Now, the way they explained it makes a little bit of sense, because they said that they were making the PC build first and then unraveling it from there. And that's always the way it's done. But it shouldn't maybe be done on a game this scale. You might want to start smaller with the kernel and then build from there. And so they were mostly ambitious with PC, but I think the timing is conspicuous and weird because, like you said, it took them over a month to say anything. Coincidentally, well outside of the launch window when you sell most of your games, and coincidentally, well outside of the holiday season when people would have been giving this game and getting this game and maybe even returning it. Then you say something, right? So I don't think that that's not calculated. I think that definitely is calculated. But I think the other thing that's weird too, to your point, is that the game wasn't running well from the get-go for a lot of people, and the game was dealing with stuff in such a way that it indicates that they know that there was a limitation on what the game was going to be able to do. And what I mean by that is there were people pointing out that on the last gen versions that traffic, for instance, in the game is only based on what you're looking at. So if you turn around, if there's like a traffic jam and you turn around and then face it again, at least before it was patched, the cars would be gone. And so that indicates to me that they knew exactly what the limitations of the game were because they were turning shit like that off. And so I think the paper trail is going to be really interesting with this one. I don't want to call them liars. I don't know that for sure. But they have a lot of explaining to do. And there are a lot of various government agencies, including in Poland, but also elsewhere, that are kind of investigating this now. Like, did they lie about the game? And it's relevant, it's relevant for the consumer, but and I know this sounds weird, but it is most relevant for investors and people with money tied up in the studio because they're the ones that were most materially lied to. You might have lost out on a $70 game that they're going to fix and make better, but some people maybe lost out on a lot. And I know it's weird to hold out to feel bad for those kinds of people, but those could be people that have like their 401k in CD Projekt or something and totally got screwed because they lied, or seem to have lied. So yeah. I think it is good that they're fixing it, but do you think it's not a coincidence, right, that they waited so long so that everyone would buy their game and maybe get over trying to return it and all that?
Yeah, I think so. And it should be noted too that, like, I mean, on the performance end anyway, like the stuff that we see like on the base versions of Xbox One and PS4 for Cyberpunk, they're unacceptable in my opinion. But if you look back when Rockstar put out Grand Theft Auto 5 on PS3, it was running at similar fidelities and similar frame rates. It was running in like the low 20s, like, and people were just sort of fine with it because that was the limitation at the time. I think they overestimated how accustomed, or they maybe underestimated how accustomed the general population has gotten to, you know, PC kind of performance on their consoles. Like 20 frames for Grand Theft Auto 5 on 360 might have been fine in 2012 and might not have raised a lot of eyebrows, but Cyberpunk 2077 at 20 frames in 2021 or 2020, like that's gonna be more noticeable and more obvious than it otherwise would have been in previous generations. So it's not even necessarily that I think the game is like uniquely broken. I think there have been objectively more broken games that have come out, and I think it's a little bit frustrating that probably the best broken game is the one that everybody decided to like suddenly like care about. It's like, oh, now you learned. It wasn't like the Master Chief Collection in 2015 that didn't work at all, or like all these, or like Fallout 76 that barely functioned, or Diablo 3. You remember Diablo 3 when like that came out and it was like it just straight up wouldn't load? There have been more broken games than this. I just think the combination of hype, the amount of time it took to make, and just how large our expectations have gotten and how accustomed we have gotten to solid performance and solid frame rates and all these other PC previously PC centric features. I think it all just kind of coalesced into this one being like, this is the straw that kind of broke the camel's back in a lot of ways. Which is unfortunate again because the game's actually really good. But
yeah, I'm disappointed that because I'm really kind of insistent on waiting for the native PS5 version. So
you should.
It looks like I'm going to be waiting for a while. I don't think it's going to happen until Q3 at the earliest, which makes sense, and that might have always been the case. But the thing is, Chris, that they're like, well, it's not a flat game; it's really vertical and dense. And I'm like, well, you made it. I don't give a fuck. You know, like I don't care. I mean, you know, it's. Yeah, they're basically trying to make excuses, being like, "Well, Witcher ran like this and this run," but I'm like, I don't care. Like, you're the one who made this game. You know, like,
just don't put it out on the previous gen. I know you're losing out on a lot of money. That's like the biggest install base, you know, and I get that. That's probably why they put it out. It's like, listen, man, this is the hugest install base for this game. Like, we can't not put it out. We spent so much money making this high end PC title that nobody can play. I don't know, like at a certain point though, you got to be like, okay, this doesn't run well. We've got to axe it, because now you're in a world of trouble. Now you've got a huge problem.
Yeah, you do, and it's going to be a problem that I think haunts them for a long time.
Yeah.
Not only with the game, they'll fix the game. Skyrim got fixed on PS3, for instance, or at least in a playable form with Bethesda back in the day. But it's not going to matter by then. The damage has been done, and I think the biggest problem, Chris, is just the competitive aspect of it. Like they were really besting Bethesda, and they were looked at as a primary competitor for Bethesda. And it's almost as if they were on the 1 yard line and then they fumbled. And Bethesda's like, oh, wait, like everyone back on the field. And, it's like now they can like get the ball, maybe run it the other way. They just screwed it up. They screwed up. They with one game, they earned a ton of goodwill and they blew it. No matter how good Cyberpunk is, they blew it. They don't have that goodwill anymore and they don't have that reputation. They lost it already. And now you have a resurgent Bethesda that might be able to come back in. This is what we were saying about Supermassive versus Quantic Dream and stuff. There are studios that can raise each other up. And I think CD Projekt blew it in record time. To be honest, it's like...
Yeah, in some ways, yeah, I do think so. I think it is a shame. I still think... I don't know. I still think No Man's Sky launched in a worse position and had significantly more misleading marketing information than Cyberpunk ever did. But, it doesn't change the fact that this is obviously like a big deal, and you guys picked a hell of a title to finally decide that enough was enough. But like, all right, you got good timing, I guess.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Hey, Chris, I'll also just point out that I'm just so tired of the hype machine in the industry.
That's true, yeah.
This game, because you brought up No Man's Sky, right? And No Man's Sky was another one of those games that was hyped to no end by the media.
Yeah.
For no reason, by the way. And Cyberpunk, I feel like was the same thing. No one played it. No one ever went hands-on with Cyberpunk before it came out. Like before they got review builds.
Well, at like E3s, people were shown.
Yeah, they went behind closed doors. But what I'm saying is that it was driven. It was what's called a driven demo. It's not.
Yeah, you're right.
No one played it. They might have been able to play it in a normal year. But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm so sick of people getting burned because of the hype of those that are closest in proximity to games, and they just don't see things objectively. And I think Cyberpunk looks awesome. I've been saying that forever, but I always was wondering, like, where is this hype coming from? Like, where is the hype coming from? And I just think people need to continue to be skeptical of the people that they're listening to out there. You see it a lot with people, suddenly someone's saying something about a publisher or developer, then suddenly they're on a live stream with that developer. Then
it wouldn't be so bad. It wouldn't be so bad if developers didn't occasionally lie so blatantly. Like I think when No Man's Sky was like about to come out, and then they were asking like, will there be multiplayer? And Sean Murray was just like, yeah. And that was just straight up false. Like it just like wasn't there. Like he just said that something was in the game that wasn't. Like just straight up fabricated. I don't know what the hell that was. Like that's still the most baffling. That is one of the most baffling interview moments that I think I've ever seen, where he just made up a feature of his game, like on the press tour. Like what the fuck is going on? But they've turned their reputation around, and I think Cyberpunk is more functionally complete of a game than No Man's Sky was. But at the same time, it's like Hello Games didn't have the same reputation that CD Projekt Red had. So CD Projekt is going to take a way bigger hit from this than Hello Games ever could, really.
Right.
So I don't know, man. We'll see how this shakes up. Hopefully they can get this patch out this year, because it is a game that's worth experiencing, I think. It's just not now.
Yeah, I have to imagine that they have to be publishing a PS5 version and an Xbox One version on disc, so they must want to get it out for next Christmas.
Yeah.
And maybe some sort of, I don't know if they'd be pretty bold to call it Game of the Year edition at this point, but it's interesting because bring up Sean Murray, no one was in over their head more than Sean Murray. Looking back, it's like, oh my God. Yeah. I don't know what the hell was going on with that. But
what the hell did they make? Joe Danger or something?
Yeah, Joe Danger. That was their previous game, which was that was a PSN exclusive actually, but at the time, but yeah, really weird and still a small team and a great feel-good story about turning things around, but also a cautionary tale about getting ahead of your skis. All right, Chris, this next one, number 6, would on also a typical week be a number 1 story on our show. It's buried here. The dream of a new Killzone may just be dead. Killzone.com, the official news, statistics, and forums hub for Killzone for the last 15 years, is no longer in operation. When you go to the site now, it says in part, quote, the official website for the Killzone franchise has retired. While this change doesn't affect the online multiplayer modes, player statistics, or ranking data for Killzone Mercenary and Killzone Shadowfall, it is now no longer possible to create or manage clans in Killzone Shadowfall. We apologize for this inconvenience. Thank you to Killzone.com's many fans and visitors throughout the years for their enthusiasm and support. Sincerely, Gorilla. End quote. Killzone.com will soon shuffle people to PlayStation.com automatically. Guerrilla Games' Killzone was at one time conceived and positioned to be a marquee FPS franchise for Sony, and Sony acquired the team outright in 2005. The original Killzone launched on PS2 in late 2004 and was followed by Killzone Mercenary on PSP in 2006 and Killzone 3 on PlayStation 3 in 2009. Killzone 2 on PlayStation 3 in 2009. Killzone 3 came to PS3 in 2011, and Killzone Shadowfall was a PS4 launch title in 2013. Since then, the series has been dormant, and any speculation of a revival now seems to be misguided. James Schubert wrote into us on Patreon, and by the way, his name on Patreon is James Schubert in all caps. So James Schubert wrote into us and said, "Gentlemen, with regards to the closure of the Killzone website, are Guerrilla done with this franchise, or is this a roundabout way of finding out what the appetite is for the next installment? You have to imagine if they're testing the waters, they haven't even started production. Thanks for the great content. Night shift on an oil rig in a cold North Sea is easier with you guys keeping me company." Yeah, stay safe out there, James, and make all that money because you have one of the most lucrative jobs, I think, in blue-collar work in the world. But stay safe. All right, James asks what the future of Killzone is. What does this say? Chris?
It's dead. I think it's dead.
Dead zone.
Yeah. You don't kill the website for a flagship IP if you're testing the waters. So it just doesn't happen. But I think, despite this, that's super, like, even though this is like super disappointing to a lot of people who like might have been into Killzone, I kind of expected this kind of thing coming. Killzone was never really, when people think of like the best first person shooters, Killzone just never shows up on any of those lists. As good as Shadowfall was, it just never shows up on those lists. And I think internally probably Sony was like, all right, we need an FPS, but like maybe this isn't the one. But that's what's kind of interesting about this is we know Guerrilla's working on isn't just working on Horizon. We know that they've hired people from what is it, the Rainbow Six team?
Yeah, the Siege. Yeah, I think the director of the Siege team.
Yeah, I think this pretty much confirms in my mind, like this is the most confirmation we're going to get that there probably is a SOCOM in the works at Guerrilla. Like the fact that they were just like, hey, we're hiring people to make an FPS, but Killzone is dead. Like what else? What are you doing? Like I can't fathom what else they could possibly be up to.
Yeah, I know that some people would be disappointed because it would move SOCOM to first person, I guess. But that's what you need to do. I mean, this is what I was saying to someone. That's kind of what you need to do in this space now, right? Like Rainbow Six Siege, if that's what you're competing with SOCOM, for instance, that's a first person game. And you hire talent from studios like that to proliferate that. Plus you have experience internally in first person. Well, I'm sure plenty of people that worked on Killzone are still there. You're right. This is two sides of a coin. If you're a Killzone fan, this is bad news for you. I don't think Killzone's dead forever, but it's dead for now. And I don't know, because in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe, I don't think they're testing the waters, but I was like, maybe they're just taking it offline and then they'll bounce back with a Killzone.com in the future. But the other thing is that if that's not true, then what you're saying is true, then it just opens up that extra slot. Now, it might not be SOCOM, but it could be something else, but it's not Killzone. Now we know that. So when we're kind of hypothesizing about what Guerrilla is doing, we have a really key piece of information now to work with that I think is very important. So it is a surprising piece of news, but maybe not that surprising, like you said. Killzone has been waning for a long time. It's been almost 7.5 years since a new Killzone game. They haven't said a word about Killzone. The studio that makes Killzone has moved on to something else that is much more popular. So
yeah,
it is sad. I mean, Killzone is a part of PlayStation's heritage, but nothing lasts forever. And we've said ad nauseum on the show, Chris, we would rather have Resistance back. And I really do think that only one of those can live anyway. So
yeah.
So, hey, the Killzone closure combined with Insomniac's constant teasing of Resistance might be something interesting too.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Maybe.
All right, number 7. It appears Square Enix has filed for several tantalizing Final Fantasy VII related trademarks in Japan, according to website Gamatsu. 2 of the trademarks are titles. One is Ever Crisis, the other is The First Soldier. The third of the trademarks is the Shinra Electric Power Company logo, which may be a retroactive move to protect what they see as valuable branding. The titles, on the other hand, could indicate something new is coming. As Gamatsu notes, Ever Crisis uses similar terminology to the beloved 2007 PSP game Crisis Core, which is a Final Fantasy VII spin-off. A 2004 Japanese mobile game also had the name Before Crisis. The first soldier, Gamatsu speculates, could be a reference to Sephiroth. In any case, these trademarks could be for any number of things, including other types of media. But with Final Fantasy VII Remake's meteoric success in 2020 and fans' eagerness for more, it could be that publisher Square Enix is preparing for a more robust Final Fantasy VII related slate of releases. Final Fantasy VII originally came to PS1 in 1997. Anthony wrote into us and said, "Hey guys, loving the new name and shows and everything you put out is just absolutely nice. Love the lot. Thank you. Anyway, did you see Square Enix trademark the name Ever Crisis? This does not feel like a remake part 2 title for me. It's too close to Crisis Core. This screams of a separate game to go alongside the remakes, and to be honest, I don't want that. Could Square be about to milk Final Fantasy VII for all it's worth like they started to do with Dirge of Cerberus, Advent Children, and that punk-ass mobile game that was about the Turks that nobody gave a shit about? What say you?" All right, Chris, you're a Final Fantasy outsider kind of, so I'm just curious what your instincts tell you about these new Japanese trademarks that seem to indicate maybe new game titles.
Yeah, I don't know. Like because it would. Do you think that the name, they wouldn't be like Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis? You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Well, they not for the remake part 2.
Not for the remake.
But Final Fantasy Crisis Core was called. I think Crisis Core was called Crisis Core : Final Fantasy VII, something like that.
Yeah, something. Yeah. I don't know. I think this, like you said, I'm an outsider. This could mean anything. Like I'm familiar with Crisis Core. I'm familiar with Advent Children. That was just like really huge, and when I was young and when that was out. But I don't know what the hell this could be. This could be mobile games. This could be. I have no clue. This is just completely outside.
I think what this is I think so. Ever Crisis. I don't know if the first soldier what that might be. I feel like Ever Crisis is just too coincidentally close to Crisis Core. Crisis Core is a really beloved game, and it's a really great game. But it's also 14 years old and it's on PSP. No one's going to play it. This could be a remake, a reboot, a re-release of Crisis Core, which is actually going to be fairly important. I don't want to spoil too much, but Final Fantasy VII Remake makes Crisis Core much more relevant. And so it's kind of important if you want to understand everything to go back and play it. And since there's no easy way to get it, maybe this is something to do with that. I just think using the word crisis is a very specific branding decision.
Yeah. No, it's definitely Crisis Core related, I think. But
so we'll see, right?
Yeah. When you started reading this news item, I heard it appears Square Enix has filed for several tantalizing bankruptcies.
Oh,
in my head, and my brain's
well,
stupid.
that could be around the corner if they keep making Avengers.
Let's hope not.
I doubt that. They have too many valuable IP, but we're gonna find out how sturdy they are, I think, this year. All right, number 8, eagerly anticipated Harry Potter open world RPG Hogwarts Legacy has been delayed. Initially planned for release on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 later this year, Hogwarts Legacy will now launch on both consoles in 2022. A brief statement released on its official social feeds reads in part that the delay is necessary to, quote, create the best possible experience for all of the wizarding world and gaming fans, end quote. Initially announced last year, Hogwarts Legacy will be developed by Initially announced last year, Hogwarts Legacy will be developer Avalanche Software's first game since being acquired by publisher Warner Brothers in 2017. Prior to that, Avalanche spent more than a decade as an internal studio in Disney's orbit, working primarily on licensed games, most notably the Disney Infinity Toys to Life series. Michael Valdivia wrote into us and said, "Hey, CNC, are you disappointed in the recent news of Hogwarts Legacy getting delayed into next year? Or do you think it helps because of the already loaded 2021 release schedule?" So I don't know. You don't seem too amped about this game. I'm really interested in this game because I feel like it's my door into Harry Potter fandom. And I don't mean like I want to be a Harry Potter fan. I just mean I need an entrance into becoming some sort of cursory involved in it.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to it. But this just seems like one of what is going to be many delays this year. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of games are going to be delayed. That's why I'm so convinced that God of War has been delayed. or that God of War will be delayed. I just think it's a weird time right now to be making anything. I think it's more disruptive. I think this whole pandemic thing has been more disruptive to game development than I think most people would assume. And I think more than game developers are willing to let on. I think, yeah, man, but also like, I can't help it. This is the thing with Cyberpunk 2, where I see this statement that says, you know, what is it? To create the best possible experience, we've got a delay. And I'm never going to have a problem with the delay. A delay is always good, in my opinion. Delay means they're going to take their time and make it better. But this being a cross-generation game in 2022 has me like remembering Cyberpunk now, and has me being like, oh man, is this thing just not running well on previous consoles? Do they need this much time to make it run well on previous consoles? Even if we get to that 2022 launch point, is it even going to function on those machines? I have all these questions now whenever I see this, like, for the best possible experience, in tandem with cross-generation games. Now that just has like a negative connotation to me.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I think you almost wonder if some studios are trying to, I don't think this might be the case here, but if some studios are thinking like, maybe we can buy ourselves a little time so that we don't even need to release the last gen version. You know, at some point, like, it almost becomes like we don't even need to worry about that anymore. But that's a risk, and I don't think that's ever going to really pay off. I kind of, the speculative person in me, Chris, is wondering, is the delay also contributed by J.K. Rowling's controversies lately? She's been very quiet. You know, she's been very pro, I don't even know how to put this without offending people. She's pro whatever you would say, biological woman, let's say, right? She's not, she just wants to say, I guess she comes out a lot saying like against the trans experience as far as being comparable to a woman's experience, right?
Right, yeah.
And this has been very controversial, and so I wonder if maybe that helps them to say like, let's just go away for a little while. You're kind of hurting our game a little bit, and just like you're hurting yourself and with your publisher, and we'll see you later, you know, because she's obviously not going to be part of the press tour or anything for the game.
Yeah, I don't know if I think that's even really something that's on their mind in as far as like when they'll release the game. I think delays are pretty much always to do with the function of the game and the state of the game. I don't think it has anything to do with any like weird outside factors, like a vague kind of public association with the author of the original franchise. Because truth be told, like, it doesn't really matter what J.K. Rowling says. She's a billionaire, and also people are going to see Harry Potter. People are going to want Harry Potter related content anyway. Like, I genuinely don't think, like, if she wrote a book, like, people would be all over it still. You know, if
Definitely.
she wrote a new Harry Potter book, like, it would be on the bestseller list like immediately. Everybody would be talking about it. People would be buying it. People would be reading it, because the reality is that people care more about just their own personal entertainment than they do of like some random person's thoughts and opinions, especially if they can very easily divorce them. And I think, especially with a game, I feel like it's a lot easier to do because you're being distracted by all these like gameplay systems. It's being made by a development studio that, you know, it's not J.K. Rowling made this game. You know, it's I don't see that.
In fact, they claim that she has nothing to do with it at all, which I don't believe. But
I'm sure they're just saying that to save face. But like, I doubt her comments or her controversy would amount to any substantive delay. I think this really I really think this does have to do with purely the pandemic making development a lot more tricky, and also just the cross-generational nature of these games being, hey, you got to make this thing palatable to next-gen consoles as something that's going to look like something groundbreaking and something cool and something new, while also having it function on tech that was finalized in 2012. So
yeah,
I don't know. This is, if I was making a game right now, I wouldn't even bother with PS4. Like,
well, this is my major concern with God of War, right? Like, I hope that they don't. Right, Horizon's all is cross-gen. I'm disappointed in these cross-gen games, but
it's very strange that Ratchet, like, of all the games, you know, like Ratchet's the one to double down. It's very strange.
It is weird. I agree. It is weird. Yeah, I think you're probably right. It is worth noting that there is a few degrees of separation between her and the game, because it's Avalanche and then Portkey, which is WB's kind of they watch over all the Harry Potter stuff. Then you have her. So It could also be Avalanche has never made a game like this. So that's another thing that they're going to need some time. And like you said, COVID is screwing everything up. So I'm really looking forward to the game, personally.
No, this next one's right up your alley, huh?
Yeah, this again would be big news. I mean, this is all big news. This is a big news week. Number 9.
Yeah, just randomly out of nowhere.
Yeah, I know. After like a month of just not seeing anything happen, but that's to be expected. Number 9 is, it could be that Techland's upcoming open world zombie game Dying Light 2 may be okay after all. As you recall, Dying Light 2 was announced back at E3 2018, the follow-up to the shockingly awesome original Dying Light, which came to PlayStation 4 in 2015. However, not only was the game supposed to be out already, but there's been some turbulence with the team too. Website PC Gamer, however, seems to have put some of the fire out with its reporting. It's been reported that the game's lead writer, Pavel Selinger, left the team at the end of 2020, and that's now been confirmed by both sides. This was concerning to many because Selinger has actually been at Techland since the 90s and was a big part of the once popular Call of Juarez franchise. But Techland noted to PC Gamer that the game's writing has been in other hands for months, that they and Selinger have left on good terms, and that the game is still indeed coming. You'll recall that this is news at all only because Chris Avellone, a veteran writer and designer who was helping to lead the project on the creative end, left the studio after allegations of impropriety. But Techland has left us with no release date for its game that was once preliminarily set for both a 2019 and 2020 release. So we have a little bit more out of Techland. I'm glad that they actually spoke. Sometimes I think it just takes an outlet to reach out. They talked to PC Gamer this time. I used to do that at IGN all the time. You'd be surprised what people say to you when you just ask. But they got a little bit of something on the record here. They don't seem to be being too cagey with the game. So I guess I'm not confident in it anymore, but it does seem like they were maybe just engulfed with an unholy alliance of COVID, Chris Avellone shit, and then just losing some important personnel that want to go do their own thing. I mean, that happens sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Do you think
man.
it's going to be any good?
I think it could be. It's concerning, though, that it's been this long. That's all I'll say about it. Because what we saw of it looked really cool the last time we saw it. And as long as it's still that, then I guess we've got a pretty cool game like in the works and on our way. But it's been such a suspiciously long silence given how much we've seen already. You know, because we saw like chunks of game. I'm remembering this completely wrong and I've invented this memory, but I remember seeing a decent chunk of gameplay from Dying Light 2.
Yeah, they did that. I think they did. Yeah, they did the world premiere.
Yeah, and it didn't look like.
And then there is almost 30 minutes of gameplay.
Yeah, like it didn't look like pre-alpha footage. You know, like it didn't look like, oh, this is like made in Unity and like the guns don't have textures. This was very much like what we were seeing looked like something that could have been out that year. So the fact that it's been so long is just bizarre. Like, I don't know I genuinely don't know what to make of that.
I feel like it's weird just because the people that they lost are usually the people that are most important at the beginning of a project.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why losing like your writer is going to really hurt your game later on. I know you still need to write and tweak and do pickups in VO, but I don't know. It is weird and it's disappointing. And hey, it's worth noting that the week after this podcast goes live, Chris, Dying Light will be 6 years old. So it has been a while. Now, to Techland's credit, two things. Number one, they really made a jump from Dead Island to Dying Light, and so that was a big jump for them, and I think they had to kind of culturally wrap their minds around that. And also, they supported Dying Light with DLC for a long time, so I don't want to be... And that was really cool of them, the following and all that other stuff they did, so I don't want to be too harsh on them, but it is weird. And this is another example of a game that is being self-published, and sometimes sometimes that money, that outside money comes with good things. And I think maybe some companies are dealing with that now. You need sometimes people that know what they're doing, that can direct you, produce, right? Make milestones and all that. And when you're left to your own devices and when you're flush with money, which they are, I think this is what happens. So sometimes limitations are good. And it's worth noting. I don't want to ever work for a publisher personally, so I'm just going to let other people do that. But number 10. The long-rumored and much more recently confirmed Mass Effect Legendary Edition finally has a release date. The PlayStation 4 compilation of the original Mass Effect trilogy will be launched on March 12th in just a couple of months. Word comes by way of website Eurogamer, which confirms the dates that were previously leaked by various online retailers around the globe. The Mass Effect trilogy, developed by the EA-owned Canadian studio BioWare, began in 2007 and ran through 2012. The three games first came to PlayStation 3 in 2012, 2011, and 2012, respectively. That's true. And were previously totally unplayable on Sony's last-gen console, which launched in late 2013. The Mass Effect series began outside of BioWare's primary... the Mass Effect series continued outside of BioWare's primary studio in 2017's, with 2017's Mass Effect Andromeda, can't read, and has in recent weeks been announced to be continuing with an unknown 5th entry. So there's that. Not much more to say about that. And then number 11, Sony has revealed the most popular games on the PlayStation Store for all of 2020. On PlayStation 5, these were the top 10 most downloaded games in order: Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, NBA 2K21, Demon's Souls, Madden NFL 21, FIFA 21, Sackboy: A Big Adventure, Immortals Phoenix Rising, and Watch Dogs Legion. PlayStation 4's top 10 most popular games for all of 2020 were in order: Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, Grand Theft Auto 5, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Minecraft, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, NBA 2K21, NBA 2K20, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Madden NFL 21. PlayStation VR's top 10 most popular games were in order: Beat Saber, Job Simulator, Superhot VR, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, Gorn, Creed Rise to Glory, Arizona Sunshine, Vader Immortal, Astrobot Rescue Mission, and Iron Man VR. And finally, the top 10 most popular free-to-play games across both PS4 and PS5 for the year were in order: Call of Duty Warzone, Rocket League, Fortnite, Apex Legends, Rogue Company, Hyperscape, Genshin Impact, Destiny 2, Brawlhalla, and Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 Lite. There's one really interesting piece of data in this. Do you know what I'm going to bring up?
What are you going to bring up?
The fact that Ghost of Tsushima outsold The Last of Us Part 2 digitally. Do you think that's the case with the physical versions? I mean, if that's the case here, then it might be possible that Ghost of Tsushima might have outsold The Last of Us, which would be pretty interesting.
I think that's probably likely, honestly. Like, I think Ghost of Tsushima just inherently seems like a more approachable game, too. The Last of Us is a sequel to something. It's like a hugely anticipated sequel, but like it's also like a narrative-heavy sequel, so chances are, like, if you haven't played the first one, you're not going to be all that interested in playing the second one, even if it is like a big kind of deal. Also, with all the negative hype around, all the hype around it is surrounded with like the negative press. I'm sure that probably hurt it a lot. And Ghost of Tsushima being a new IP, something that's like exciting, something that's like kind of, Japanese centric. So I'm pretty sure it sold pretty well in Japan in comparison. I think, or at least like that's what I assume. Like I don't have data for that, but I would imagine that it probably benefited a lot. I think Ghost of Tsushima benefited a lot from the negative press of The Last of Us.
It probably did.
I think, yeah. and I think that would translate to sales. Yeah,
we don't know for sure yet. It's going to be neck and neck, I think. It's also worth noting Ghost of Tsushima was on the market for less time, so it's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
that it's ahead of The Last of Us in digital sales anyway. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, Chris, was, I guess it's not a huge surprise, but Black Ops Cold War outsold Miles Morales. I was a little surprised by that, especially because Miles Morales is $30 cheaper. So you would assume that would have given it an advantage, but it just goes to show you like how perpetually popular. Yeah, I mean, you have Call of Duty, the top best-selling game on PS5, PS4, and free-to-play. And I also thought it was interesting, Chris, that, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Destiny 2 was number 8 on the free-to-play list, which I thought was kind of surprising, right? It indicates that it's less popular than Rogue Company. And Genshin Impact was pretty big, but what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, free-to-play kind of shows, what is it, that it's like the new light expansion. I think Destiny 2 is very popular. It's also something that a lot of people buy. It does seem to be like one of these games that people buy and then they play for a long time. And the free-to-play version of it, I would imagine, would probably not be as enticing if more people have. I think there's just less people who can even play the free version of Destiny 2 because probably so many people have it already.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I don't know, like that seems interesting. Like, I'm surprised to see Xenoverse there at all,
Yeah, that's interesting too. I didn't even know that existed, actually, the light version of it. And then, hey, Rocket League, number 2.
Yeah, look at that.
Ahead of Fortnite, ahead of Apex Legends. Pretty impressive. Shout out to Jeremy Dunham, my old boss, who's now very rich. Congratulations to him. Number 12. He's the vice president of that studio, by the way, for people that don't know. Number 12. The official PlayStation blog reports that action RPG Disjunction is coming to PS4 on January 28th. This is a wrap-up, of course. Website Push Square reports point-and-click adventure game Touhou is coming to PS4 on January 28th. Action RPG King of Seas is coming to PS4 on February 18th. Horror game Mundawn is coming to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on March 16th. And 1993 Sega CD game Ground Zero Texas is coming to PS4 on March 2nd. Gematsu reports adventure game Silver Chains is coming to PS4 on January 29th. Idle game Neptunia Virtual Stars is coming to PS4 on March 2nd. Japanese-style platformer Kitsune Tales is coming to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 during the second quarter of this year. FPS Boundary is coming to PS4 this summer. And multiplayer game Project Winter and 3D platformer Blue Fire are launching later this year on PlayStation 4. Publisher Electronic Arts and developer Respawn have revealed a PlayStation 5-centric patch for 2019's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, a PS4 game that on PS5 can now run at 60 frames and 4K.
Hell yeah.
Website Twisted Voxel reports that Joe's Diner, the PS4 horror game that was one of the very rare PlayStation 4 titles that wouldn't natively work on PS5, has been patched to do just that. Japanese publisher / developer SNK has revealed that fighting game The King of Fighters 15 will be launching later this year, presumably on PlayStation 4. SNK also revealed that The King of Fighters 2002 Unlimited Match will be coming to PS4 later this year with netcode. And finally, Ubisoft's upcoming multiplayer extreme sports game Riders Republic has been delayed until later this year on both PS4 and PS5. So some updates there. You excited about the Fallen Order patch?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super exciting. Dude, I'm so happy that this is just becoming like a regular occurrence.
It's nice. It's really
so nice.
I agree with you. You were totally right about that. All right, Chris, it's time to get into our intriguing games of the week. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game complete edition is it's back. It's returned.
It's very exciting.
And I feel like I just have to pick this because it's just I'll admit, like, when I played this game initially, like when I was younger, I wasn't that into beat 'em ups, and I kind of didn't appreciate it fully. But I've always really liked Scott Pilgrim, and I always like appreciated the art design of it. I always appreciated the soundtrack that was in it, and it did feel good to play. And the fact that it just disappeared from the PlayStation Store and like pretty much every digital storefront, seemingly out of nowhere, was disappointing because it was such a standout, even just visually speaking, for that genre. So the fact that it's back again is just really, really, really nice. It came out yesterday, the 13th of January, and it's about it's $14, and it's real good. It's 1 to 4 players co-op. It's got remote play if you're into that.
You can play online now, right? Which I don't think the original.
Yeah, supports up to 4 online players with PS Plus. So like now you can play online, which you couldn't before, which I think was kind of the point, but it's a pandemic, so fair enough.
Yeah, it was I remember that was kind of, when that was released 10 years ago or so, that was kind of controversial at that time, because I remember that was when the Behemoth released Castle Crashers on PS3 around that time too, and you can play it online, so it was a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's a great choice. I love that game. And the trophy list for it seems to have combined the original trophies with, because the original game doesn't have a platinum, so for people that are interested, this game does, obviously, and I think it just took all the DLC trophies and kind of folded it in. I'm going to download that this week for sure. My choice here is a game called Manaspark. And this is an action RPG. It's kind of like a roguelike. It's from a studio called Behemoth, Behemutt. This game was already on PC and it came to PS4 this week. It just looks like a pixel-based, interesting, almost really reductionist graphical style that I think is most akin to something like Towerfall. And you're just going through randomly generated dungeons and you're doing your fighting. It just looks like a game that would have been really nice on Vita. I know it's on Switch, so I think that might be a good place for people to check it out. I think it's actually been on Switch for a while as well, so you might want to check it out there. But I think it's only $10, and it just stood out. There's still not very much coming out on the PlayStation Store, so we're left with, I don't want to say scraps, that's kind of insulting, but things are kind of starting to rev up a little bit. So I think we're going to have more games to select from for our intriguing games. But I like the choice of Scott Pilgrim. I think it's a little too big for this usually, for this section of the show.
Yeah. No, I did think about that, but I also just like this because it was so weirdly taken off the store. I'm just like, hey guys, listen, just to let people know, you can get this again.
Right. Because you're right. There was a licensing dispute that made the game taken off.
Yeah. And also,
and it was never on PS4. So there.
Yeah, and also, quite honestly, like everything else seemed kind of I still think it's a bit slow. I don't know what I would have chosen if not for this. You know?
Yeah, there's not much. I mean, what we copped out last week and just kind of drove people towards sales. So it'll pick back up, and then we'll get back to the 30 games a week that you don't want to play. All right, let's see here. Chris, it's time to wrap things up with a little listener mail. As tradition dictates, we end every show with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from our audience on Patreon. And remember, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia to get early ad-free access to our show, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to our show, and exclusive access to our Patreon exclusive episode of this show every week called Sacred Symbols Plus. We begin with Big Artie, who wrote into us. And by the way, I'm using natural light today, so it might be getting a little dark in my room. I apologize. Hey, CNC. Sony's officially watching us like Big Brother. I got a really nice quick scope in Fortnite the other day. I know, please don't make fun of me. After the game, I received a message from the guy I killed who was trash talking me. I, for one, love participating in trash talk, so we called each other names in a joking manner. Then 30 minutes later, I received a message from Sony stating I violated PlayStation's code of conduct. It was basically just a warning email. The first thing I did was message the other guy, and I asked him if he reported me. He didn't. So Sony is monitoring all of our direct messages on our PlayStations. This harkens back to the news that Sony is monitoring voice chat logs and the backlash that it received. I wasn't worried about it then, but I'm definitely worried about it now. Can you imagine if Apple emailed you about using profanity in your text messages? It'd be completely unacceptable. Pretty interesting. I don't know exactly how I feel about this, Chris. What do you make of Big Artie's story here?
Well, there's 2 things to take into account, right? If this is true, that's pretty wild, and I don't like that. That is a little intrusive, and I don't like it. The other situation is you don't know this dude, and he could have just pretended not to report you.
That's what I was thinking is one of the possibilities for sure.
Yeah, like you have no reason to necessarily believe this dude, especially because he's like trash talking you. You know, like I wouldn't be surprised. Like I'm sure people would report you, and if you asked, they'd be like, no. You know, because otherwise you'd be able to report them, right? Because presumably you exchanged.
Yeah, goose gander. You know? Yeah,
so I would, if under the assumption that this is true, then that's a pretty huge breach in my opinion, and I think that's actually really fucked, and I don't like that. That's a really creepy way for PlayStation to be doing things. But my gut is telling me that he reported you and just didn't want to fess up to it.
Yeah, which is cowardly. If that's the case.
Kind of my gut, because I've sent look, man, me and my friends do this all the time. Like we'll send each other like ridiculous. My friends use the actual like game apps to communicate for whatever reason. Like I don't know why they don't just text me, but they use the PlayStation app and the Xbox app and shit like that. And I send ridiculous messages to them all the time, and I haven't gotten any. I'm sure I've said way worse than you guys were saying to each other.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's definitely a 50% chance or better that he was ratted out by this guy, but you don't know. Like Chris said, you don't know him, so
yeah, there's no reason to believe that he wouldn't.
Right. I do think it's weird if they do monitor it. I do think the Apple analogy is a little off because you're not paying Apple for the service. In fact, that's a latent service. You paid for the phone. So it's not a subscription, and it wouldn't be something they're monitoring. Also, I think the volume is just way higher on iMessage. So I'm not really trying to pierce a hole in your argument, but I don't think it's quite 1-to-1. What do you seem like you're skeptical about that?
I think it's a little bit. You know, I don't necessarily think the comparison is 100% accurate, but I do think it's equivalently creepy for them to be monitoring the tone of your messages.
Yeah, that I agree with. And I do think that just be nice to each other. I mean, you don't know anyone out there. I mean, I don't know that you need to keep it PG-13 or something, but I would just watch who you're saying things to. You don't know who you're talking to out there. And
yeah, you
don't want to lose your PlayStation Network account. I mean, imagine losing your PSN name. Like, and all your games and your trophies and stuff. I mean, I would retire from video games if that happened to me. I would be done. So I'd just go on and do something else in my life. But I don't talk to anyone, so I don't have that danger. All right, let's see here. Colin Wilson wrote into us, said, "Hey, CNC, with the recent announcement of new games in both the James Bond and Indiana Jones canon, are there any other older intellectual properties you would like to see revived in video game form? I would love to see a Quantic Dream style Back to the Future game. The 2010 Telltale game didn't quite scratch the itch for me." Yeah, that was before Telltale was really. I played all 5 of those episodes for Back to the Future on PS3. That was before Telltale was Telltale, really. It's a nice idea. Back to the Future is pretty cool. We got a Ghostbusters game, obviously, on PS3 back in the day. That was like kind of the proper Ghostbusters 3, I think. So there's a few old IP that would be intriguing, but what comes to mind for you, if anything?
Yeah, you know what? I think a Gremlins looter shooter would be pretty. No, I don't know. Like, I think Back to the Future is pretty cool. I do think Back to the Future as a concept just works better as a narrative though than a game. Like, I don't know how you would really make a game mechanic out of time travel in the way that it exists in Back to the Future. I think you kind of have to. It has to be like kind of like a quantum break or like a Life is Strange type mechanic, which is just not how it works in that universe. But I don't know. I think I feel like Indiana Jones would have been my answer, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, Indy's a pretty good one.
Because it's the one that's been conspicuously missing despite its obvious influence over the gaming industry. Like the fact that it's been so influential, like objectively speaking, like to Uncharted and to Tomb Raider and just all the games that are inspired by those games that are obviously that owe a lot to Indiana Jones as a series. I think that would have been my answer, but I think maybe I can't. Nothing's coming to mind.
To me,
I feel like we have everything. I feel like we have so much nostalgia marketing now, where like so many old things are getting reborn.
I agree.
That I struggle to think of one that isn't.
Two things come to mind for me. Number one is Lethal Weapon. I'm a huge Lethal Weapon fan. What about like a brawler, like a Double Dragon style, Final Fight style brawler with when you play as Riggs and Murtaugh, right? Like something like that would be really fun. And then Battlestar Galactica, which I'm a huge fan of. Yeah. We never really got a real Battlestar Galactica game. There was one that was like a 3D strategy game called Deadlock, I think, but we never really got like a AAA Battlestar game, and that's kind of shocking. Battlestar was huge. I mean, it was huge in the 80s, but it was even bigger from 2003 or 2004 to 2009, and they didn't take advantage of that situation at all. And that was even before the Cylon attack or during it, or a dogfighting game or something. There was a million different things you could have done, right? Strategy, ship strategy.
Oh yeah. You know. No, totally. I think I would love to see, actually now I'm thinking about it, I would love to see an RPG, a Firefly RPG in the style of Outer Worlds. No. Like in that type of kind of like Bethesda style kind of RPG. Firefly is just like a really fun universe to me, and it got like a really good tone that lends itself really well to video games, I think. But that's the one that sticks out to me.
That was the original nerd culture stamp of approval when Firefly was out. That was like one of the first.
Firefly.
Yeah, it's great. And when Serenity came out, and I remember that was like one of the first like cultural revivals we ever. I'm using the word revival a lot today. I have no idea why. Where something came back that people wanted, you know, and we later saw that with Jericho and others, but that was a big deal back then. All right, Andy Capt wrote in and said, "Hey guys, just wondering what is going on with MLB The Show 21. They have not released a trailer or cover athlete. This is odd because the game usually releases in March. Just curious about your thoughts." So I looked into this for you because I thought it was weird too, Andy. We have not seen The Show 21 yet. And we usually do see it the year before. And like you said, it usually comes out in March. Now, as Chris knows, and a lot of you know, this is going to be a really marquee year for the franchise because it's the first time it's going to be on multiple platforms. And I think that's the reason why you haven't seen it, because I think Sony is not going to be able to promote it the way they used to promote it on PlayStation Blog and elsewhere, where it's like, this is the big PS4 game or a big PS5 game. And so I think what they're going to do is just kind of wait until maybe wait a little bit more, and then they're going to have to admit it's coming everywhere. Yeah. And which they've really not explicitly said, right? I think that's one of the important things that people have not noted is that when San Diego and the MLB announced the deal beginning in 2021, which I think they announced in 2019, Sony's still not acknowledged that the game, like that they're publishing an Xbox game, they're publishing a Switch game. And so there might be something to do with that as well. But I think I was looking, like I said, I looked it up, and I think people know there's a website called Operation Sports, which is a really well-respected sports video game website. And they had a story from October where they basically said, and they said, Sony San Diego said from the beginning, they're not going to say anything about the game until 2021. So they lined it up to have a different kind of arc. So I just wanted to point that out. Big game for PlayStation. really excited to see how it does on other platforms. And I am also really excited, Chris, is Sony going to be allowed to pull some shenanigans where they say we have a PS4 version, an Xbox One version, a Switch version, and a PC version, and we have a PlayStation 5 version, but no Series X version, something like that. Like, I wonder if that's something they can do. I don't know. I don't know if they want to do that. I think they're about to find out how much money they're going to make on the series.
Yeah, I don't think they would bother doing that, because like it's really just like a code base swap, you would assume. And why not just try and sell as many copies on everything at that point? Like, it seems arbitrary to kind of hold back a game just because it's not necessarily on the platform that you used to be exclusive to.
Yeah, I don't know how.
We'll see, man. It's weird. This is weird times we're living in.
It is, and I guess I wonder how. What's the word I'm looking for? How petty is Sony going to be able to be, right? Because they want to be petty. I'm sure that they didn't want this to happen to begin with.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
But they are going to make more money. But it opens. They're losing one of their main. I think, and we said this on the show, so this is not news to our audience, but it's a really important exclusive. Like, a really important exclusive. And it's been an exclusive for many years. So much so that it's almost not even looked at anymore as an exclusive.
Yeah, but counterpoint. Are people really going to like stop buying PlayStations because MLB The Show is on different platforms?
No, I don't think so. I just think Sony's now going to be paying licensing fees for getting the games on. They get 100% of the money on PlayStation and 70% on another platform.
But they're still going to be selling like the majority of their copies on. Like, I feel like they're still going to make the amount of money that they would have made on PlayStation with the 100% sales on that platform, but now they're just going to get way more from other platforms. Like, I don't know if anybody's going to be buying MLB The Show on PC for any real reason. Like, it seems like a console game. Like, it seems like something you'd want to play. It doesn't seem like PC is for like RPGs and like hardcore shit. Like, it's not for a sports game. Like, I don't know anybody who plays sports games on PC.
Yeah, the only sports communities I know on PC are the ones that play like the really nerdy simulation games, like where it's just basically spreadsheets. And those games are fun. I actually tried to play one of those games once for NHL, where you basically like own it's all like numbers and spreadsheets. But people love those games. It would be tantalizing though to have the show on PC, maybe as a way to mod it. Yeah, and also totally. To buy one copy of the game and then just update the roster forever and never buy another copy of the game as long as you live.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm very interested to see how that goes. Very interested to see that Sony San Diego logo on an Xbox box. It's just one of those things. I just want to see it. And I also want to see the PlayStation Studios thing at the front of the game. And then how they do the marquee thing where they show the different characters. Who's going to be in that? There's a lot of interesting questions to ask,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because this is going to be their way to be like, if you're a Nintendo gamer, you play MLB The Show, you don't know anything about Sony or anything about them, then this is a way for you to see in a few seconds every day you turn it on. Well, who the fuck is that boy? Who is that young boy dressed in burlap? Well, that's Sackboy, son. That's Sackboy. All right. Paul Sabo wrote into us. So what's up, guys? It's been a while since I last submitted a question, but I just got to ask Colin. You said in the last episode that you bought Final Fantasy XIV during the holiday sale on PSN. Why? I bought it too, and I've put in over 50 hours this week alone, but it is an MMO. We know you don't like online games. I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, but the content didn't really grab me until about 15 hours ago. Boy, we know you care about it and your time. We know you care about your time. And lastly, it's subscription based. I personally love it, but I'm wondering what enticed you to buy it. Love the new content. Well, I thought I said this, but I guess not. It's a game that I bought. First of all, I like to support Square Enix. I like Square Enix. But the other thing is that Micah, my girlfriend, she's still here, but she's leaving in a few days. She's been here for over a month, but she's going home. And I felt like this would be a good game for us to play together while she's gone. So that's why I bought it. And I've never really played an MMO. I don't know if my aversion to it is even accurate because I've never challenged my own boundary of what it is to play. So I felt like this was a good, obvious game. See, there were only a few of these games that I was like, this is an option for me over the years, right? I think The Elder Scrolls Online was another option for me. But this just seemed like it was the game I wanted to play. The price was right. I know it's subscription based, but it was like $30 for everything. So I thought that was a good deal. Maybe it's not. Do you have any interest in this game?
Not really. Like MMOs, I don't have an aversion to multiplayer games in the same way that you do, but MMOs to me just do seem like they require a lot of time, and I feel like I only really have time for one of these kinds of games at a time, and right now that game is Destiny 2 because my friends all play it. And it's also just Final Fantasy, which I'm very particular about. I like 7 a lot. I'll probably check out this new one too, the next proper single player one, because it does look aesthetically really cool. Especially now that I'm kind of used to like this new gameplay style. That's a little bit more enticing to me than, the exclusively turn-based style of previous generations. But yeah, no, I don't know. This one's probably not going to happen for me.
That makes sense. It might. I gotta say, be honest, it might not happen for me either.
Yeah, we'll see.
So, we'll see. But
I'm
there
surprised
are
you didn't just
hundreds
get
of
into
games in my library that I bought that have not happened for me.
I'm surprised you didn't just get into the multiplayer aspects of The Division.
Yeah, we could do that. In fact, she's a huge shooter fan. She loves Gears, and she plays Gears online all the time. But yeah, I want to kind of use I kind of want to use it as a way to just try something new.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good reason.
But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'll hate it. Demetric Edwards wrote in and said, "Greetings, gentlemen. So it seems like the Shadow of Mordor trophies had online trophies that have been patched to still be obtainable since the servers have been taken down. Why don't more studios do this with their trophies that require players to play online when servers are taken down?" So I noticed this, and this isn't something that happens very often, but it does happen. We were talking about Rainbow Six Siege before, and I think they've edited their trophies multiple times. But so for people that don't know, what appears to happen, Chris, is that the trophy slot, like the brand of trophies, so like bronze, silver, gold, and then where it is in the list cannot be moved. But you can just change the name, the title, and the trigger of it. And so if that happens, the person who earned the old trophy has that trophy, even though they never earned it because it's in that slot. And that's kind of the best way they can work around it. I think it's awesome that they did this. And here's the thing, Chris, I was curious what you think of this. What do you think about the idea of it being mandatory that if you're going to take a game's servers down, that the trophies must be edited if there are multiplayer trophies? Because there are lots of games out there that have their trophy list essentially broken once their servers go offline. And it was kind of cool that they figured that they wouldn't do that to their game.
I don't know if I agree with it.
Well, talk to me.
I think it's cool. Like if you want to do that, I think that's like really acceptable and like a really cool thing to do for your fans. But at the same time, I think about, and obviously like I didn't really get into the trophy hunting game. Like I started achievement hunting on 360 and then I just fell off the second the PS4 Xbox One generation began for reasons that I don't even fully know. I just sort of like stopped chasing these things, and maybe it was because I was becoming more agnostic with my platforms, and I just was like, oh well, if I'm playing games on PlayStation and Xbox, there's no real reason to have like a particularly big score in any of these given games because it's going to be divided. Looking back, that's probably the reason. But I just think when I look back at some of the achievements that I got in multiplayer games, specifically on the 360, on the Halo games, I remember I would try to complete all of them, and I didn't complete Reach, and there are a bunch of multiplayer achievements for Reach that I just didn't get. And that sucks, but that's kind of on me. It's a multiplayer game. I know the nature of it. These things don't last forever. If I really wanted them, I would have gotten them. And I think it's kind of cool to be able to be like, hey, you know what? I got all these achievements. I was there for the beginning of it. I was there for the infancy of this game. I proved my worth here. And that's kind of a testament to it. Whereas opposed to like you see two people with 100% achievements or 100% trophies, and they got there in completely different ways. I feel like that kind of, I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, you make an interesting point, actually, because it's almost like its own kind of timestamp if you don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like its own kind of moment in time that you're kind of commemorating with a trophy. But at the same time, I would currently like to get those achievements. Like I would love to be able to 100% Reach, but I can't.
Right.
So I totally understand both perspectives of it. I think my opinion is just like whatever the developer does is probably fine.
I thought it was cool just because Shadows of Mordor is old. So I thought that was kind of a nice thing for them to do.
Yeah, no, totally.
But yeah, so that's happening there. It was funny when we were talking about this, I was thinking about it where with Twin Breaker and Habroxia, for instance, we have access to the trophy servers and we put our trophies up for our games. It would be funny if in 10 years I just patch Twin Breaker and just make heinous trophies. Like, and it just says you just did heinous shit and you earn them all like 10 years ago or whatever. You know? So that is kind of interesting too, where you almost want to be like, well, can you know, because as far as I can tell on PSN profiles in the API, it doesn't seem like there's any like update information. Like once the old trophy's gone, it's just gone. Like it doesn't say like this trophy has been replaced or whatever. So that would be another interesting thing to do. Because if they did that, then you can make a really dynamic and interesting trophy economy where, like you said, because I remember Xbox did the one where they had the day one achievement, right, for Xbox One, which I thought was kind of cool. Like things like that you can do, and then you can also make it more accessible for everyone. You can have the best of both worlds.
No, exactly.
All right, Christopher, our final question comes from Leon Aston, and it's really more of a PSA, and I appreciate it. He says, hello, Pekara, Colin, and Corone Chris. I don't know if I just said something horrible there.
Yeah, no idea.
Recently, I decided to start watching The Mandalorian. Normally, I would use my TV's built-in apps to stream TV shows and movies. I always thought, why have a controller next to me when I have a remote that can also adjust the volume? However, when I loaded up Mandalorian on its version of Disney Plus, I noticed how awful it looked. I decided to entertain your practice of using consoles for streaming, so I fired up my Xbox One S, and I was immediately stunned by not only how snappy the UI was, but also the astronomical upgrade of the image quality. I can say with confidence, this is the way. I will be streaming content from now on. Thanks for the great content. Thank you, Liam. And by the way, someone answered Liam's question on Patreon and said, yes, this also happened to me.
Yeah,
so you're
because
very welcome.
It is objectively better.
I just couldn't believe that. People fought the other ones. They're like, what? What are you saying?
You know? Like what? It's crazy. Maybe it's just like we experimented with our machines more than most people do, because like I definitely like fucked around with like smart TVs like when they first came out and was like, oh, it's cool. Yeah, I can like watch Netflix on my TV and I don't have to have anything plugged into it. But I got a 4K TV specifically because I have consoles that, you know, output to 4K. So I'm obviously going to have something plugged into it. I'm not going to have a 4K TV so I could Chromecast YouTube videos. And so I was just like, well, my console's always on anyway. I might as well just like watch it through here. And it's like, wow, immediately the UI isn't sluggish. It's not super slow. I don't know what it is with smart TV remotes, but they're the most unreliable remotes I've ever used. They will just ignore inputs. The only thing that it reliably does is shut it off. Doesn't even turn it on reliably.
No, I actually had two TVs in my living room the other day, one in RCA and then one on my wall, the LG I use, and I turned on one and it just randomly turned off the other TV, and I'm like, but they're not even the same brand. You know, like what is going on here?
Because they use the same
IR.
What is it? Right? Yeah, exactly. It's annoying. So you have to like aim like at this weird angle across the room, so it's like just outside the peripheral, just so it shuts one TV off and then turns the other TV on.
It's very weird. But I will say that the I have really nice 4K LG TVs and the remote control. It's nice, but I tried to use the microphone, you know, in it, and to be like, oh, I want this. And then it's like, you have to set up your Google Home account. I'm like, fuck off. And then I put my PlayStation 5 on, you know, and I was just like, forget it.
No, exactly. Yeah.
All right, Chris. Well, that's all we have for this news-laden episode of Sacred Symbols.
It was a big one.
It was a big one. That's what she said. Now, Chris, do you have any closing comments before we go?
Man, I am so hungry.
Yeah, me too.
Like remarkably hungry. I think I'm gonna, you know what? It's a Five Guys kind of day.
Yeah, it is. It is, isn't it?
I'm thinking it's a Five Guys kind of day.
I feel like I might be simpatico with you on this one. Might go on the Uber Eats.
And you know what?
Yeah, please.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get Five Guys. I'm gonna play some Maneater.
Wow, good for you.
That's what I'm gonna do.
That's a Colin Moriarty night if I ever heard one. Good for you. Just roll up a 5-gram joint and you'll be all set. All right, Chris. Well, it was good to see you. It's good. I feel like the show is only going to get better and better now that we see each other again. I like this.
Yeah, it's way better.
Yeah.
I think just being able to like read actual faces.
Yeah. Also, our comedic timing that we had really built up in person, I feel like is lost when we can't see each other as well.
Yeah. Well, because you can lead into things more. Like if you can see that someone's about to say something, you're more likely to just kind of let that person speak. It's something that I've noticed also doing the Snark Tank on video. It's just like, oh, like we're immediately way better off doing this because now we can fucking actually like tell when one of us is about to say something. We can like naturally transition to each other, and it's way better.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was wrong about my insistence on not doing video, although I can't wait to see what kind of historical terrorists and other people, bearded people that you guys compare me to this week. So let me know.
And by the way, the video being an aspect here is better for audio listeners as well because of that.
I agree.
It's not just the video.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So wherever you listen to us, thank you for your love and kindness and support of our show. We'll see you for Sacred Symbols Plus. Remember, Sacred Symbols Plus will be Game of the Year, but we will make that free for everyone later on. But do support us on Patreon if you can. Yes. And that's basically it. I'll see you next time. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Until then, be very well. Goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and Burbank, California, USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun Maldonado. Sacred Symbols' executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.